In the vast universe, stars twinkle, and every nebula in its prime emits the most dazzling light. But this region alone appears somewhat dim, with every planet seemingly lifeless and filled with desolation. This is a massive galaxy formed by two ellipses entwined, stretching endlessly in the cosmos. Aside from its odd shape and slight dimness, its most distinctive feature is the double star disk. This is a brand new galaxy being formed from the collision of two galaxies. On the edge of a larger star disk in this newborn galaxy, there lies a dead planet. From the outside, its dark gray surface is visible, utterly devoid of life. The cause of this is not the explosion craters scattered across its surface, but a massive hole that pierces through the upper half of the planet. The massive hole has nearly erased a quarter of the planet, taking its life with it. In the low orbit of such a planet, a coffin-shaped square spaceship appears. The spaceship looks aged, with silver-yellow mottled armor covered in repair marks, and the tail engine's flame flickers unsteadily, as if it might extinguish at any moment. Imra reports finding usable resources below. Prepare for individual landing. Inside the spaceship, a bearded, wrinkled old man in a greasy coat shouts at two men before him, spittle flying. Remember, this time, you should find plenty of dark energy blocks. Bring them all up to me. Despite the old man's yellow teeth being close and his expression hostile. But the two men, thinking of his nephew working under the Blackguard leader, swallow their anger. They exchange glances, quickly walk to the spaceship wall, step into two human-shaped depressions, spreading their arms. This planet is safe, just use the Landwalker suits. The old man pats the shiny grease stain on his coat, walks to a control terminal screen on the wall, and swipes his finger across it. The two men waiting in the depressions hear the old man mutter and change color. One slightly burly man speaks urgently. The Landwalker only has basic interstellar flight and life support. If we encounter other bosses, men or space explorers, we're dead. What? You want to use the Thunderclap eye? We only have one set on the ship, saved for fleeing with supplies when we encounter space explorers on the return trip. Now Imra has found dark energy blocks below, and we haven't seen anyone. What are you afraid of? The old man glares, stops swiping, and spits again. Due to the proximity, the two men can even smell the indescribable odor. All right, Landwalker it is. Tosa, stop talking. The man beside him tries to dissuade him. But, it's fine, Mr. Miut. He's just worried about the dark energy blocks being stolen. Landwalker it is. Hearing the flattery, the old man, named Miut, turns back and continues operating. After a while, with a mechanical turning sound, a bright light flashes behind the two men in the depressions. With a series of clanking and clicking sounds like precise machinery assembling, the light fades to reveal the two men covered in full-body armor. The armor is an aged brown yellow with signs of wear from time. Yet this cannot hide the advanced technology of the armor far beyond the era. It looks exquisitely precise, with small rings on the joints like elbows and knees where energy flows slowly, as if breathing. A strange humming sound comes, and a blue light lights up on the angular helmets. Landwalker loading complete, energy 65. The ship's main control voice echoes in the cabin. The old man turns and says, get down quickly, activate the armor at 5,000 meters from the ground. When you return, I don't want to see armor energy below 50. The two exchange glances, nod, and open a nearby hatch to enter. Miut is as stingy as ever. After they enter, the hatch closes immediately, then another hatch opens to reveal the dead planet outside. Let's go. In this era, energy is everything. Tosa shakes his head with a bitter smile, pushes off the cabin wall. Without gravity, his body floats gently out. The other man follows, floating out of the cabin. The dead planet's gravity catches them, pulling them down rapidly. Without the armor's balance system activated, the two suits begin to spin wildly. Tosa calmly focuses his eyes to open the life support options on his HUD. In this era, those who wear such armor are all talented individuals, and the spinning from gravity is routine. For those who often land on planets with armor, it's second nature. Basic life support system activated. All micro dark engines ready. Distance to ground 69, 68, 67 kilometers. The descent accelerates, alarms blare inside the armor. Tosa remains calm, focused on the rapidly shrinking distance to the ground. Distance to ground 10 kilometers. 10.95. Tosa's pupils contract, and he quickly activates most of the micro-dark engines. The other armor activates faster, with glowing points on the back. Energy lines flow across the once dim. If the armor before engine activation looked like ancient knight armor, intricate but worn, then, after activation, the flowing energy lines in the joints. It's as if the armor is infused with a soul, making it mysterious and magnificent. With a whoosh, their descent speed increases dramatically as they use the engines to accelerate. The planet's surface appears through the armor's imaging. It looks much like the outside, a gray, barren land with no signs of life, dotted with huge craters from violent explosions. More striking is the gray land, covered with ruins of steel cities stretching endlessly into the distance. The 5,000 meters pass in an instant. At a few hundred meters from the ground, the remaining micro-dark engines of both suits activate simultaneously, causing their descent to curve sharply into an L shape, speeding away rapidly. The antimatter erosion of dark energy is still so severe. It hasn't recovered after hundreds of thousands. Although he has explored many planets of previous civilizations, the sight of ruins eroded by dark energy antimatter still shocks Tosa. Haha, Tosa, what are you sighing about? This stuff is everywhere. It's enough for us to survive in this era. Hurry up, Imra has been waiting long. His companion laughs over the comm channel. Coming. Tosa shakes his head and quickly follows. The armor flies fast over the ground, close to the speed of sound, even though it's the cheapest suit on the ship. Soon a large pit cleared from the city ruins appears before them. At the bottom of the pit a figure stands in the middle. Tosa, Ponzi, I'm relieved you're here. The figure wears armor similar to theirs, but with extra engine-like port. Where are the dark energy blocks? Tosa cuts to the chase, without pleasantries. Below. Imra smiles, mysteriously crouches, and energy lines glow on the armor, a sign of engine activation. He presses one hand on the ground, and half his arm glows with blinding light. A low rumble follows, kicking up, but the armor's imaging is unaffected. Tosa and Ponzi see a faint blue light emanating from a pit about 3 meters in diameter. How many dark energy blocks? This was an undiscovered lab buried under a pile of building ruins. I found it by chance. Imra doesn't elaborate, but describes the terrain. The two men's eyes light up. Dark energy blocks were the most common energy source in the old civilization. They are used in everyday machinery, armor, spaceships, and warships. Usually when exploring such planets, they only find ordinary energy blocks for household or ship use. But a lab requires immense energy, so this storage area for energy blocks. Thinking of this, their breathing grows heavy and their gazes toward Imra change. Don't forget old Mute is up there in the thunderclap. Imra walks forward without looking back. Tosa and Ponzi stiffen, then adjust, and quickly follow. That's about it. Probably most was used before the war. But this harvest is still good, and we'll get a decent ship. Imra looks at the neatly stacked dark energy blocks, a hint of excitement in his eyes. The dark energy blocks, as their name suggests, are about the size of bricks, like sapphire crystals, emitting a faint glow. The pile before them has about 40 or 50 blocks. Tosa nods, and a metal ball pops out from his right wrist. The ball lands by the blocks and quickly expands into a square metal container, wrapping them up. Let's go. Ponzi walks past. One hand gripped the metal box while Tosa also grabbed it from the side. The engines of the 3 sets of armor hummed simultaneously, lifting them and the energy block upward. Compared to their descent speed, their return flight was much slower. Under normal circumstances, such velocity would never be sufficient to escape the planet's gravitational pull. Though the planet was dead and its gravity weakened strangely, they seemed unaffected, ascending into space at a constant speed. If only we could have activated the balance system on the way down, we wouldn't have felt that dizzying sensation of being caught by gravity. In the communication channel, Ponchi couldn't help but complain. Come on, energy is scarce now, but we need to conserve it. If you had used the balance system on the way down, Mud would have skinned you alive. Tosa shook his head with a wry smile. Imli, flying slightly behind them, was about to speak when he immediately noticed an abnormal warning from within his armor. Unknown object rapidly approaching. Unknown object rapidly approaching. You are locked on. Seeing this, years of experience instantly told him what was happening. He roared into the communication channel. Someone. Before he could finish his sentence, an immense impact force struck him. His body was jolted violently, and he uncontrollably plummeted downward. Only then did Tosa and Ponchi flying ahead react. They turned in horror to see where Imli had been now occupied by a strange armor that was leisurely retracting its elbow. The armor looked tattered and worn, covered in patches of various colors. If not for the faint edges and the energy lines indicating the engine was running, such armor could be tossed into a garbage heap without anyone giving it a second glance. Yet this very armor caused them both to be filled with terror. Tosa's lips were dry as he murmured, "The most mysterious leader of the Plunder Land. Why would he be here? It's 19, the one who occupies one of the 6 leaders, as a lone wolf." Ponchi even screamed. The mere mention of the Plunder Land, a notorious den of space pirates, lawless and swarming with thugs, was enough to make anyone pale, let alone one of its leaders. "We cannot give up the energy block. Hold on a little longer, Musa will be here soon with the Azure Thunder." Tosa gritted his teeth and spoke into the channel, glancing at the block in his hand. "But can we hold him off? It's not about whether we can or we must. If we lose this energy block, Musa will not let us off when we return. True, let's fight him. I refuse to believe that piece of junk armor can." Boom. The tattered armor appeared beside him without warning. One hand pressed against the arm holding the energy block box, and a terrifying impact force erupted. Hanks's body shot away like a cannonball. The hand holding the energy block box was also uncontrollably thrown aside. Tosa, gripping the box, turned pale. He hadn't expected such appalling power from the seemingly dilapidated armor. Calls to Musa over the channel never ceased, but it would take time for him to reach them from the outer atmosphere. Both companions had been knocked away in a single exchange, and an immense pressure suddenly fell on Tosa's shoulders. 19 maintained the same speed as him, watching from a distance, as if deciding where to strike. The energy block's weight was not excessive. Tosa only slowed slightly. But the strange armor clung to him like a shadow watching from the side. Sweat continuously dripped down his face inside the helmet, only to be instantly cleaned by the suit. Tosa's heart was frantic, yet he could think of no solution. Fighting was definitely out of the question. He knew his companion's abilities, similar to his own, and they had been knocked away in a single unguarded moment. The impact must have been devastating, or they would have returned by now. What to do? Think Tosa, he muttered anxiously in his mind, searching for a way out. Why not, sir? A slightly puzzled voice came through the public channel. Tosa's body stiffened mid-flight. So the other party had been waiting for him to surrender. Couldn't he just make a move? Would it kill him? Or waste too much energy? Well, the energy consumption seemed considerable. But this sudden surge of humiliation, what was it? So in his eyes, my life isn't worth the energy of a single attack. Son of a bitch, they'll fight you. 19 grabbed the free-falling energy block box with one hand, while slowly retracting the other. On it, the faint remnants of terrifying energy application could still be seen, glowing and then fading. Azure Thunder armor. The core seems decent. He murmured to himself, casually slung the massive box onto his back and flew toward outer space like a desert traveler. Damn it, those three lost contact. Couldn't they hold out even this long? In the thin atmosphere, an azure blue armor with sharp angular lines and white energy patterns rapidly flowing across its surface was speeding through the air. This armor looked as if it had just left the factory, smooth and gleaming. Its design seemed centuries ahead of the suits worn by Tosa and the others. The armor's fingers were claw-like, with two elongated combat spikes on the back of each hand. At the chest, a sapphire energy core pulsed powerful energy in all directions. Most striking was the long blade strapped to its back, nearly as tall as the armor itself. The blade was silver-gray, slender, with a hollow ring for a handle. Inside the ring floated a small red crystal, which upon closer inspection continuously emitted waves of energy into the blade, making it pulse rhythmically like a living thing. This armor belonged to Musa, who had donned the Azure Thunder and rushed to support after receiving messages from Milky and the others. To be safe, he also brought along the blood slash, a weapon his nephew had specifically entrusted to him for emergencies. Obtaining the blood slash had cost his nephew no small price. But since his nephew loved money and constantly explored new planets, he had given the blood slash to Musa for his own protection. Who is it? This is the Plunderland. How dare you mess with me? Don't you know I'm backed by Boss Heisho? Musa was growing anxious. Thanks to his nephew, he had gained Heisho's favor and had been bullying others in the area without consequence, often robbing them. But those who knew his identity had to swallow their anger. This time he was on a remote planet, and having grown accustomed to his tyrannical ways, he had let his guard down. He never expected to be robbed himself. Whoever you are, you'll pay for stealing from Musa. The Azure Thunder's panel was far more sophisticated than the Landwalkers. It displayed various data, planetary gravity, speed, wind resistance, and even something like a radar. Soon Musa spotted a small red dot on the panel rapidly approaching from a distance. High energy signature. So you're the one who stole my energy block. Inside the helmet, Musa grinned, revealing yellowed teeth, and let out a sinister laugh. He pushed the speed to its limit. Boom. The Azure Thunder broke the sound barrier, creating a ring of sonic boom as it shot into the distance. Before long, Musa saw an armor in the distance carrying a massive box and flying fast. The other party showed no intention of fleeing upon seeing him. Instead, it accelerated slightly and charged straight at him, seeking death. Still unable to clearly see the opponent, Musa flew into a rage. Mid-flight, he drew the blood slash, reversed his grip, and held it in front of him. At this speed, crashing into the blood slash, you'll be cut in half. A smile crept onto Musa's face as he imagined the sharp blades slicing through the opponent. Neither side showed any sign of slowing down. The distance between them shrank rapidly. Swish! The sharp blood slash left a trail of crimson light in the air due to the high speed. At the very last moment, the opponent made no attempt to dodge, passing through Musa like a foolhardy novice. No resistance. Even the blood slash couldn't be this sharp. Musa was stunned. His face suddenly changed drastically as he frantically searched for the armor's wearer. Suddenly, a tremendous force struck the hand gripping the blood slash. Before he could react, searing pain shot through him. Oh! Musa clutched his right wrist, retreating quickly. When he saw the condition of his wrist, his entire body trembled and beads of sweat as large as beans rolled down. Even the helmet's cleaning system, running non-stop, could not keep up with the torrent of sweat. He clenched his teeth, staring at his wrist, which was grotesquely twisted at 90 degrees. His blood slash had somehow ended up in the opponent's hands. Only then did Musa get a clear look at the other's armor. His already ugly face turned deathly pale as the memory of his nephew's warning about who not to provoke in the Plunder Star surfaced. Uncle, you're my only remaining family. Although Boss Heisho always says emotions are foolish in the Plunderland, I still can't let go. You often go out for energy blocks, and I don't care about your methods. But there are some people you should just run from. I know all the top lieutenants of the bosses. Don't worry, I only rob explorers and small groups without connect. There's one more person. If you run into him, forget everything else. Just make sure you have an escape pod to get back. 19. That most mysterious leader, whose name no one knows. Why? How can a single person become a leader of the Plunderland? Uncle, you've been exploring outside, and don't know. But once you've been robbed by all the leaders, you'll understand why. Those memories evaporated like bubbles. Musa could only force a dry laugh. 19. Why are you here? I need some energy and parts. I understand. They'll take you back to the ship right now. Musa bent over with a forced smile, flew ahead. In the spaceship adrift in outer space, Musa removed the Tsongle armor, speaking cautiously like a peeled-off little girl. It's all here. If there's anything else you fancy, feel free to take it. Before him lay dozens of dark energy blocks and several neatly arranged, already opened boxes containing various finely crafted components. No need for the other parts. Just this one. Sergio, clad in his own armor, first stowed the energy blocks into a box, then approached the Tsongle armor mounted against the bulkhead. His 10 fingers moved in a blur, and the seemingly exquisite Tsongle armor was visibly dismantled, components being carelessly tossed aside. As Musa watched with wide-eyed astonishment, the outer shell of the Tsongle armor was stripped away in just a few minutes, revealing the intricate machinery and circuits within. Musa was deeply shaken. The people of the Plunderland only knew that the 6th leader possessed formidable combat prowess, and that his armor was eerily potent, but none realized that he was also a master mechanic. The Tsongle armor was rare, even in the Plunderland, and there had never been any reports of one being lost. Clearly this was the first time the other party had encountered such armor. Yet under these circumstances he could still dismantle it in such a short time, and with bare hands. Oh no, Musa immediately noticed that because the other had paused, the armor's 10 fingers were now visible. At that moment those 10 fingers had extended numerous tiny precision tools, making the whole assembly resemble a mechanical spider. This discovery struck Musa with a fresh wave of astonishment. Such a configuration in the armor before him would only be found on engineering armors. And from the brief skirmish earlier, the armor's performance was clearly not inferior. It could well be classified as a main battle armor. Incorporating engineering armor design into a main battle armor while still maintaining combat capability, what did that imply? This Sergio was not alone. Behind him stood a formidable design team. Musa's mind sharpened, and he immediately realized he had stumbled upon something remarkable. With a click and a hum, an unexpected sound interrupted his thoughts. Before the now dismantled armor, Sergio was holding a rhomboid core that emitted a faint radiant glow. Musa's pupils contracted sharply. He recognized this object. The Tsongle armor owed its name to this very core. Without it, the armor was just an ordinary suit. This was the Leguang core of the Tsongle armor, situated near the armor's engine. Its energy conversion principle was complex, but its function was simple. It could drive the armor's engine into a Leguang state. In the Leguang state, the armor's speed would double and attacks would be imbued with lightning effects. This was also one of the credentials that elevated the Tsongle armor into the ranks of high-grade armors. Every high-grade armor, besides possessing a powerful high-output engine, also featured various distinctive armor cores. Through these cores, the armor could accomplish many extraordinary feats. Amplifying power and adding attack effects were merely the basics. The more powerful cores could even enable spatial jumps or temporal deceleration within a region. Sergio casually tucked the core into a small hidden compartment on his belt, then entered the isolation pod and left the spaceship. This time I've really bled myself dry. Musa smiled bitterly, gazing out the porthole at the streak of light that swiftly vanished into the dark cosmos, then slowly began gathering the scattered parts on the floor. Sergio remembered little before the age of 10. All he could recall were basic life skills and his name. In his memory, he had awoken suddenly amidst the ruins of the Plunderland. At that time he had only instinct, until he met an old man who scavenged for trash. The old man was barely literate, a native of the Plunderland. He found Xia Mu's name too cumbersome, and since in the Plunderland no one ever used real names, he casually gave him the name Sergio. From the old man, he learned that this was an era of destruction and also an era of rebirth. At that time, Xia Mu thought this might have been the most profound sentence the old man had ever uttered in his life. The Milky Way's galactic era and the Andromeda galaxy's Ceylon era, two highly advanced civilizations, for reasons unknown, fiercely launched a war spanning both galaxies. Upon contact, the fighting became fierce, with countless powerful weapons emerging. The full-scale war engulfed every habitable planet in both galaxies, lasting a full 10,000 years. In the end, both sides nearly exhausted their energy. The Ceylon era employed an unprecedented technology catalyzing the core of the Andromeda Nebula, a black hole known as the beginning of the era, and hurled it toward the Milky Way. The collision of two massive galaxies wrought a cataclysmic disaster, annihilating both civilizations. Only then did the two galaxies begin to merge, forming a new elliptical galaxy. Now it is 1 million years after the collision. The two galaxies have already merged halfway, and the process continues to accelerate. As early as 100,000 years ago on the planets left behind by the two epochs, humans began to emerge like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. But these people did not evolve. They were humans who had sealed themselves within subspaces during the collision of the two. As for how they survived, and whether they rebuilt civilization or did something else, the old man did not know. In any case, they showed no intention of rebuilding civilization. Instead, they began carving out territories and searching for something. This led to the current era of the new epoch, a chaotic mess of various interstellar factions vying. The humans of the new epoch used the technology left behind by the collision of the two civilizations to forge a new power system, the external armor, like the Tsonglei armor. The old man called it Xinjiang, literally inviting a god to descend. Regardless of the name, when Xia Mu put on the armor, he indeed felt a tremendous boost in his strength, reflexes, and everything else. Along with this came a flood of instinctive combat memories and an unexpected familiarity when touching the Xinjiang. He could even close his eyes and sense every mechanical detail of the armor. Xia Mu didn't know where this came from, and the old man didn't either, calling it merely talent. But Xia Mu knew it was more than that. It was something surging from the void of his memory. When the old man first learned of this talent, he was ecstatic. But after acquiring the low-grade Xinjiang and having Xia Mu wear it, watching him sit motionless inside for most of a day, everything changed. The old man's temper soured. He often ordered Xia Mu to do all sorts of dirty, heavy work, scavenging, doing manual labor in town, while he himself spent the meager star coins Xia Mu earned on a glass of flaming rose at the tavern, then returned half-drunk and bellowed at Xia Mu. "You're just a bastard I picked up. You can't even use the Xinjiang. Be grateful you're alive. Work hard. If you don't earn money, go steal it." In truth, the old man didn't know that it was Xia Mu's first time entering the Xinjiang, and the sudden rush of memories had instantly overwhelmed his blank mind. From that moment, Xia Mu lost his conscious will entirely. He never tried to steal as the old man had ordered. All he knew was to help others carry things, possibly earning money or picking up decent trash to trade for coins. Occasionally someone would give him food, a slightly plump figure he encountered daily. This person always insisted that Xia Mu finish eating in front of him before handing over the money. Helpless, Xia Mu complied. Thus, supported by his simple thought processes, he repeated these tasks day after day, while his conscious mind rapidly assimilated the vast information. The old man not only cursed him, but also often struck him. However, given his frail body, the blows were nothing more than a minor annoyance to Xia Mu. Xia Mu paid no attention to it. Each day a torrent of combat memories and knowledge about armor surged within him. Just processing them overwhelmed his blank mind, so he obeyed the old man's commands on instinct. In short, before this, Xia Mu's perception of his surroundings and people was extremely vague. He was more like a walking corpse. Simply put, he was a fool acting on instinct. The old man didn't mind. In his humble life, encountering a machine that could earn him money for drinks at the end of his days was already a stroke of luck. Though the machine was slow to earn money, it was enough to buy the cheapest prostitute at the tavern and enjoy himself thoroughly. The reason Xia Mu remembered the old man at all was that before the strange knowledge emerged, the old man's tales of the two epochs and the new epoch had profoundly shocked him. Also, after the memories ceased flooding in, when most of his consciousness returned, the first thing he saw was the old man lying on the bed, barely breathing. At that moment, the old man noticed Xia Mu staring blankly at him, and suddenly perked up, roaring, "Bastard, hurry up and get me some wine. Let me have a drink." Years of ingrained habit made Xia Mu instinctively hand him a bottle of crudely made sullitan. Then he noticed the old man's other hand hidden under the blanket, clutching a small knife. As he handed over the wine, Xia Mu muttered softly, "Neck, heart, ribs, top of the head. One touch, and you're dead." The old man didn't catch it. His eyes were only on that bottle of sullitan, the cheapest liquor in the plunderland, yet to him it seemed like ambrosia. Gulping down a huge mouthful, he then revealed a sinister grin, brandished the knife from his bosom, and lunged at Xia Mu's chest. "I'm about to die. The road ahead might be lonely. You living doesn't mean much anyway. So come with me to the other side, and earn me some drink money." Xia Mu was actually quite surprised. In his eyes, the old man should have had no strength left to move. The fact that he could drink so fiercely already defied expectations. Despite his profound confusion, Xia Mu seized the old man's wrist with unerring precision, twisting it inward, ignoring the man's earth-shattering screams. With his other hand, he grasped the old man's face and slammed it viciously onto the dilapidated bedboard. With a crack, the wooden bedboard burst apart, half of the old man's head sinking into it, and his screams ceased abruptly. Shaking his head to dispel those distant thoughts, Xia Mu, now flying through the cosmos, refocused his gaze ahead. Before him was a slowly rotating energy vortex. Yet within the divine armor, there was no high-energy alert indicating that this energy was remarkably stable and already logged in its database. From the vortex, various spacecraft continuously emerged, streaking off in all directions. There were microships of several dozen meters, medium-sized ships of a few hundred meters, and none larger were visible. All these vessels shared a common trait: their bodies were streamlined with nearly every part designed for speed, leaving minimal space for cargo. Near the vortex floated several massive planetary debris, each about a dozen kilometers in size. Many ships were parked on them for repairs. Xia Mu swiftly descended onto one of the colossal rocks, which was packed with all manner of spacecraft. Numerous individuals in divine armor stood outside, clustered in pairs or threes, apparently engaged in conversation. The divine armors looked eclectic, each with a distinct style, giving the impression of a ragtag army at first glance. Every divine armor bore a variety of weapons on its back: giant axes, longswords, meteor hammers, and the like, all in abundance. The moment Xia Mu landed carrying a large crate of dark energy blocks, he immediately drew their attention. In an instant, a flood of hostile gazes turned toward him. But when they saw his armor patched and battered, looking utterly decrepit, everyone recoiled like startled rabbits, turning, without a second glance, to flee into their ships. The ship engines roared to life, and before the stabilization systems could fully engage, they lurched away from the rock in a clumsy escape. Within roughly 30 seconds, a vast empty space had formed, leaving only a single small ship about 10 meters long parked nearby. Xia Mu paid them no heed, carrying the crate of dark energy blocks as he walked alone toward the small vessel. Inside the ship, the space was cramped. He casually set down the crate of dark energy blocks and made his way to the cockpit, activating the shuttle. The cabin, once dim, gradually brightened as lights flickered on and the ship powered up successfully. The small craft lifted off from the rock, flying toward the slowly rotating vortex. This was a relic from the previous era, a cosmic wormhole. The technology of both epochs had reached its zenith precisely because of these wormholes, which enabled travel across the universe. But the war between the two civilizations had been unprecedentedly fierce, and wormholes were the lifeblood of both sides. Most battles raged around the large wormholes, leaving very few intact after the war. In this era, maps had become priceless treasures. In the vast cosmos, a map that accurately indicated a still functioning wormhole was invaluable. There was no market price for it. Yet this did not mean wormholes could be used freely. The new powers of the new era carved up territories relying on these wormholes. Possession of a wormhole had become a hallmark of each faction. The wormhole before him was a small one in the Plunder Star, jointly owned by the 6 overlords. The wormhole sat there, impossible to monopolize. Unless one possessed overwhelming power, the 6 overlords had to reluctantly share authority. In the Plunderlands, no single faction could dominate the other 5. Xia Mu's small ship slowly approached the wormhole. Up close, he could see it was not unguarded. On either side of the massive vortex stood 2 divine armors, heads bowed, each holding a giant sword. At the hilt of each sword, a green gem emitted a faint, eerie glow. Every ship entering seemed affected by the gem. The cabin glass would flicker green, echoing the gem from afar. Traffic was sparse. Soon Xia Mu reached the wormhole. Sitting in the pilot's seat, he stared straight ahead, casually inputting a brief command on the console. The transparent cabin before him immediately glowed with a green light. Without any obstruction, Xia Mu's ship sailed into the spinning vortex. The view instantly transformed. No longer the vast starry sky, a twisted tunnel appeared before Xia Mu, with colorful energies streaking past, like shooting stars. Inside the wormhole, he could see various ships. As soon as this small craft appeared, the nearby vessels, which had been charging their engines, fell into a momentary hush. Then, as if realizing something, they subtly distanced themselves from the small ship. Xia Mu let out a soft breath, ignoring the other ships. His fingers danced across the console, sending a series of commands. The small ship's engines roared to life. This small ship was the most common Raider 2 in the cosmos. With its slender hull resembling a swordfish, the Raiders called it the Little Swordfish. 3 small dark energy engines sufficed for basic interstellar travel, and with 6 auxiliary engines, it navigated complex environments with ease. But it had a glaring flaw. The common weakness of small ships: their endurance for high-power long-distance flights was too short. In short bursts, the Little Swordfish was among the best in its class. But using it to traverse a wormhole was somewhat pushing it. In a normal wormhole, whether explorers or raiders, anyone seeing such a ship would try to persuade the pilot otherwise. Of course, a raider's persuasion was more about salvaging something before it was destroyed in the wormhole. After all, even a mosquito's leg is meat. But in this wormhole of the Plunder Star, the raiders, all of them, dared not persuade this small ship. Because anyone daring to use a small ship here could only belong to that one overlord of the Plunderlands. The next scene confirmed their suspicions after the Little Swordfish ignited its engines. It was like a beast awakening. The engine exhaust completely different from a normal little swordfish erupted. A standard little swordfish typically had 3 exhaust plumes arranged in a triangular pattern. But this one, as if heavily modified, spewed out 8 thick exhaust plumes. If the quietly cruising little swordfish could still be called a swordfish. With 8 engines ignited, it was nothing short of a great white shark. The 8 engine plumes of the little swordfish roared and surged again, and the tiny ship shot forward, vanishing into the wormhole tunnel. Inside a nearby medium-sized ship, a man with his captain's coat casually draped over his shoulders, chest bare, stared at the spot where the little swordfish had disappeared, his eyes wide. After all these years, I still don't know how the hell he manages to cram 5 extra engines onto that little swordfish without it exploding. Another man stood beside him, shaking his head with a wry smile. It's probably nothing but engines beyond the cockpit. Although wormholes could drastically shorten interstellar distances, traveling through them still took time, from as little as half an hour to as long as 10 days or more. The wormhole Xia Mu was traversing was a short-range one, taking about an hour. After activating all engines, he engaged autopilot and moved to the cabin behind the cockpit. Against the cabin wall was a distinct human-shaped indentation. Xia Mu spread his arms and stepped into it. Click, click, SSS. Amid the mechanical whirring, a young man stepped out, fair-skinned with handsome features and a slightly disheveled hair. His eyes held a depth beyond his years, but on closer inspection, they seemed unfocused, as if his attention was elsewhere. His physique was well-proportioned, clad in slightly faded clothes that gave him a clean, simple look. At first glance, if not for the thin vertical scar beneath his left eye, many would have mistaken him for a poor student rather than one of the infamous 6 overlords of the Plunder Lands. 4 years had passed since the old man's death. Adding the 4 years the old man had raised him, Xia Mu was now 18 years old. The concept of age came from a vague memory of a slightly plump figure asking him. Only fragments remained in his hazy recollections. How old are you? I don't know. Age is the measure of a person's journey through life. Then you don't even know your birthday. Birthday? A birthday is. Well, I'm not very educated, but you should know it's a very important day for everyone each year. Since you don't know, let's make today your birthday. With that, the figure turned and brought back something that looked like a small hammer. This is meat. It's delicious. From now on, come to me on this day every year. That was the first time Xia Mu had tasted meat. In his empty mind, he had never eaten anything so wonderful, nor had any food ever filled his perpetually empty stomach so completely. Thus, what he called the very important day left an indelible mark on his heart. It wasn't until the old man died, when he fully absorbed all those battle memories and his main consciousness recovered, that over the following 4 years of contact, Xia Mu learned the concepts of birthday, age, and meat. And that slightly plump figure from the old days and the blurry memories devoid of main consciousness had vanished at some point, never to appear again. In the 4 years since, on that special day, each year, he would go get something to treat himself. A gift for myself. Xia Mu held a faintly glowing core in his hand, turning it gently. The colorful light from the wormhole's edge streamed through the cockpit, casting shifting shadows across his face. Crackling arcs of electricity danced across the precision core, carrying a dreamlike aura. Xia Mu lifted his head, furrowing his brows slightly as he gazed at the Xinjiang before him. After his memories awakened, he relied on that knowledge to continuously scavenge various discarded Xinjiang components on the Plunder Star, eventually piecing together this suit of Xinjiang armor through sheer effort. Though its appearance left much to be desired, its mobility and offensive power rivaled the Xinjiang armors of the major warlords on the Plunder Star, matching their core strength in every aspect. One must recall that when this seemingly battered armor had trampled over the Xinjiang of various raiders and stormed their gates, the expressions of the major warlords on the plunder ground were nothing short of spectacular. With a hum, Xia Mu pressed his hand against the wall beside the Xinjiang. A pale green handprint illuminated, perfectly matching his palm. The Xinjiang armor before him suddenly rotated, revealing its intricately constructed back to Xia Mu. A flicker of contemplation crossed Xia Mu's eyes as he reached out and pressed a certain spot on the Xinjiang's waist. With a series of clicks and a hum, the armor on the Xinjiang's back rapidly unfolded, exposing its exquisitely fine internal structure. A faint blue thread of light ignited instantly, spreading across the entire interior of the Xinjiang. Upon closer inspection, one could see that these threads pulsed rhythmically, as if imbued with life. All the threads emanated from a single source, the core of the Xinjiang. The core of Xia Mu's Xinjiang had been seized from a warlord of the plunder ground. It was a core named Ghostly Shadow. Unlike the lightning state granted by the lightning core, this core's function was to generate 3 shadow projections during each attack, each with half the power of the original. In high-intensity battles, once Ghostly Shadows was activated, the assault became a barrage from all directions, leaving no room to evade. Even on the plunder ground, such a core was a rare find. The warlord who initially possessed it had paid a tremendous price to acquire it. During his battle with that warlord, Xia Mu had nearly dismantled the opponent's entire Xinjiang to secure the core. Dual core. Xia Mu murmured, meticulously sifting through the information that had recently surfaced in his mind. Dual core. The information in his mind contained a highly detailed modification plan. As the name implied, it allowed the Xinjiang to install 2 energy cores. If the denizens of the Plunder Ground were to learn of this, it would undoubtedly stir up a storm of bloodshed. It was precisely this newfound information that had sparked his interest, and encountering such a fine core had made him unable to resist making his move. Confirming his mastery of the information, Xia Mu retrieved a pair of mechanical gloves from a nearby toolbox and put them on. The gloves immediately expanded, each of the 10 fingers extending from the joints into 20 finer digits, each tip equipped with various small tools. Xia Mu's gaze sharpened as he extended the mechanical gloves to the back of the Xinjiang. The 20 mechanical fingers sprang into motion, with fine electric sparks flickering across them. The time required to traverse the wormhole was brief, only about an hour. Soon the wormhole reached its end, and the small swordfish plunged into a spinning vortex, vanishing in an instant. When it reappeared, it was beside a massive earth-yellow planet. This was a star system common in the cosmos, with over a dozen planets of varying forms orbiting the distant star that radiated boundless light. The planet before them occupied a central position within the entire star system. 2 enormous rings, one horizontal and one vertical, revolved around the earth-yellow planet. Gazing intently, one could see numerous faint specks of light darting across the rings in the dark void of space. The 8 tail flames of the small swordfish, which had just emerged from the wormhole, extinguished, leaving only 3 to propel it toward the ring ahead. As the distance shrank, the ring grew larger and larger, revealing its features. It was a breathtaking mechanical marvel constructed entirely from various mechanical modules. Spaceships were taking off and landing everywhere, bringing life to this desolate corner of the universe. Xia Mu's small swordfish approached a dock. As it drew closer, one could see a bustling crowd below. The swordfish docked at an entrance, and Xia Mu, donning his Xinjiang, opened the hatch and stepped out. A thunderous roar suddenly erupted. The moment he exited the hatch, Xia Mu slightly tilted his head. A red beam streaked past his cheek, the distorted air rippling beside the steel mask of his Xinjiang. The beam plunged into the swordfish's cabin, leaving a deep, bottomless hole that melted the surrounding steel. The passers-by all changed expression. Anyone daring to start a fight on Toro the Elder's dock must be from another faction. Were the warlords about to clash again? At that thought, the passers-by froze in unison. With a series of clicks, various weapons were drawn. In an instant, the crowd produced an array of arms. Laser pistols, high-energy rifles, charged laser guns, all appearing from nowhere. The once peaceful dock instantly became tense, with weapons trained on all sides. Ah, 19, you really are cautious. Let's call it a day. Hope you're just as alert tomorrow. A sudden voice rang out from the crowd. The faces of the onlookers twitched, whether from the voice itself or the mention of 19 in the speaker's words. They scattered, leaving a wide open space in the dock, with only one person remaining in the center. This person was also clad in Xinjiang armor, its contours sharp and angular, the black armor perfectly conforming to his body, as if every piece was designed for human dynamics. Most notably, in his right hand, he held an enormous gun resting vertically against his shoulder. The weapon was 1.5 meters long, constructed from complex mechanical parts. A long flat front with a slight concave middle replaced the barrel, and the red energy within pulsed faintly, clearly the source of the terrifying beam moments ago. Only then did the crowd notice Xia Mu, who had just descended from the small swordfish. They immediately holstered their weapons and watched the pair with keen interest. A scar-faced bald man, accompanied by several heavily armed subordinates, hung his laser rifle on his back, crossed his arms and grinned. Now this is a show worth watching. Boss, what's going on? Who is this guy daring to start something on Toro the Elder's turf? And with such a loud gunshot, why hasn't the self-defense force shown up? Asked one of the subordinates behind the bald man, hastily putting away his weapon. Hey, you better remember these 2, kid. They're the most untouchable on the Plunder Star. Keep your eyes open from now on. As for the details, I'll send them to your terminal. Another subordinate smirked, patting his shoulder, and fell silent. Before the subordinate could check his terminal, Xia Mu's voice answered his question. Trell's hand should be cut, Xia Mu muttered to himself as he walked slowly toward the man. Xia Mu continued his slow advance, his gaze fixed on the armored figure before him. I'm so scared. Ha ha. As if recalling something amusing, the man suddenly bent over, clutching his stomach with one hand. You can hit our special zone because it's right there, but can your speed catch up to me? In response, Xia Mu's figure vanished abruptly. Boring. The man curled his lips slightly, and the large spear in his hand, through a complex series of mechanical transformations, shrank to half its size, forming a rectangular box that fit perfectly onto his back. Meanwhile, red energy lines densely covered his divine armor. With a thunderous roar, 2 deep footprints were left in the ground, and the man vanished as well. Hey, Tellier, that guy is as cautious as ever. I failed. When he reappeared, he was atop an unknown metal structure. A small holographic screen popped out from his divine armor's wrist, displaying a strong man in a black jacket. I understand, Enya. Come back first. The man named Tellier nodded calmly, as if he had already anticipated. He'll be back soon. Oh, and remember to prepare 2 women for me, he. The moment Enya ended the communication, his expression froze. He looked down in disbelief, staring at a silver-gray long blade that had suddenly pierced through his chest. How? How could you catch up to me? Before he could finish, 3 black shadows appeared out of nowhere, slashing at him from above, left, and right simultaneously. The shadows dissipated, and Enya let out a piercing scream. 3 horrifying jagged wounds appeared on his arms, and the armor on his head, nearly tearing the divine armor apart. A tremendous force struck his back, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest before collapsing face first to the ground. It was then that Xia Mu's figure emerged behind him. Casually, he inserted the blood blade into the slot on the back of the divine armor, crouched beside Enya, and studied the large gun on his back with interest. Enya was already lifeless. Xia Mu placed a hand on him, removed the large gun, and hung it casually on his own back. With a silver-gray long blade and a large gun crossed on his back, the sight was somewhat incongruous from a distance. But Xia Mu paid it no mind. He leaped from the edge of the unknown building and vanished into the distance after a few bounds. Shortly after he left, a sharp intake of breath was heard. Enya, lying stiffly on the ground, sat up, as if reanimated. That was the Thunder Core. How could his cobbled-together divine armor have the same strength as our main battle armor, and even accommodate 2 cores? Impossible. I must report this. Enya widened his eyes, opened his divine armor's visor, and gasped. Damn, didn't expect I'd need a cybernetic heart one day. I have to get back quickly. The life support system of the divine armor won't last long. Enduring the pain in his chest, Enya struggled to his feet and tried to activate the communication device. If a scanner had been used to examine Enya's body, it would have revealed that the heat source in his heart had vanished, replaced by a small black hole. The energy lines of his divine armor had also shifted, all converging toward his heart. Although the divine armor's energy could substitute for the heart's function, it was not a permanent solution. Moreover, it could never match the original heart's ability to supply blood and energy in perfect harmony with the body. Thus, just standing up made Enya feel as if he were about to collapse. With a familiar roar, the sound he would never forget rang out. In the past, he had used that very gun, named Yi Lin, countless times to kill enemies in the shadows. But with his current physical condition, dodging was impossible. All the divine armor's energy was now being converted into blood to sustain his life. A flash of crimson light streaked by. Enya froze in place, a fist-sized charred hole in his head, radiating scorching heat, distorting the surrounding air. Yi Lin, is it? On a rooftop about the same height as the building Enya was on, Xia Mu rested the large gun and glanced at the 2 small characters engraved on it, pondering briefly. Not bad power. With a series of mechanical clicks, the massive gun shrank until it became a rectangular box about 1 meter long and 40 centimeters wide. Xia Mu then hung it behind his back. The divine armor activated again, and Xia Mu leaped down, speeding through the city. People wearing divine armor and shuttling through the space city were everywhere. The place was bustling, filled with flying shuttles and figures appearing prosperous at first glance. But upon closer inspection, the bustle was excessive. It was outright chaos. Indeed, chaos. Every pedestrian and every person flying in divine armor was armed to the teeth. Fights, robberies, murders. All kinds of violent incidents were commonplace. Xia Mu landed on the ground and walked slowly, ignoring the surrounding chaos. The people around him seemed to recognize him, and none dared to provoke him. With a crash, a figure was sent flying from the roadside onto the street. The oncoming shuttles showed no sign of slowing. A high-speed shuttle slammed into the figure with a sickening crack, sending him flying again. By the time he landed at the roadside, he was already lifeless. Buzz. Soon a massive white transport shuttle marked with a crimson cross, so dark it seemed almost black, opened its hatch. A person in white divine armor stepped out. The moment he spotted Xia Mu in the distance, he paused briefly. Then he quickly leaped down and tossed the corpse onto the transport shuttle. Xia Mu ignored him and continued walking. Strangely, the rampant violence on the streets did not affect the shops. Everyone tacitly moved conflicts to the roadside or areas without stores. After a few steps, 2 people ahead got into a fight, grappling right in the middle of the street. It was no minor scuffle. Within moments, a bald strong man caved in the other's chest with a single punch from his mechanical fist. The severely injured man realized he had met his match and tried to flee in terror. But on the Star of Plunder, the only safe place was the territory you secured yourself. Seeing the bald strong man approaching with a sinister grin, the terrified man, with nowhere to run, panic-stricken, dashed into a nearby weapon shop. The bald strong man stopped, crossed his mechanical arms, and sneered at the shop. Moments later, a black shadow was flung out in a parabola, rolled a few times on the ground, and lay still. A body lay motionless on the ground, a bullseyed hole in its chest still oozing blood. Xia Mu frowned slightly and stepped around it. Such incidents were commonplace on Plunder Star. Though countless people died, each day the population never dwindled, only grew. Xia Mu had long grown numb to it all. Ever since his primary consciousness was liberated, every day he witnessed nothing but this. He had come to realize that here might made right. The 6 overlords of Plunder Star each governed their own domains. Within their territories, few dared to cause trouble. The planet's shops and markets were built by 3 of these overlords, and after countless lives and rivers of blood, a bizarre order had taken shape. It was chaos, yet a chaotic order reigned. 3 overlords controlled the commercial district's underground trades and shops. Another 2 ran the Crimson Cross, a research-focused faction with a morbid obsession for corpses. Aside from Xia Mu, they had never clashed with other factions. Yet being one of the 6 overlords meant they were no pushovers. They had earned their place by directly replacing a former overlord. The remaining faction, Black Rose, consisted entirely of women. They accepted only females, but any who underestimated them would pay a bloody price. On Plunder Star, women were a scarce resource and many covetous factions eyeing them. Yet for all this time, none had succeeded in their schemes. Instead, countless reckless fools one after another had laid down their lives amidst a sea of blooming black roses, cementing Black Rose's position as the second strongest faction. Plunder Star was a place of twisted order where no laws existed, but the distorted rules upheld by the overlords. Xia Mu, as one of the 6 overlords, was the most unique. He had no faction, he walked alone. Yet no one dared underestimate him. The other 5 factions secured their positions through numbers and experts. Xia Mu did so by being the strongest being on Plunder Star. Conflicts flared constantly on the streets. The Crimson Cross shuttles zipped to and fro, but not to save lives, only to collect corpses. The shops flourished, and no one dared bring chaos near them. Xia Mu walked leisurely along the street, and after about half an hour he arrived before a sparsely populated building. Compared to the bustling chaos elsewhere, this place was conspicuously deserted. Despite being in the most prosperous area of Plunder Star, no one approached. Even brawls and chases deliberately avoided this spot. The building was a roughly 100-story tower, plain and square. Xia Mu approached the massive black glass doors, and they swung open at his arrival. This was his residence on Plunder Star, a gift from the other 5 overlords after he became the 6th. The moment he stepped inside, the clamor vanished. The black glass was a special material, opaque from outside, but offering a clear view of the outside world from within. Without looking back, Xia Mu waved his hand. The glass wall shimmered, and the outside scene disappeared, replaced by a brilliant starry sky. The interior was strangely arranged. Upon entering, it felt like a luxurious villa, not at all like the first floor of a 100-story building. The divine armor slipped off Xia Mu's body and melded into the wall. He rubbed his temples, then sat down on the sofa for a brief rest. No, it wasn't me. I didn't steal it. In a narrow alley, a young man, disheveled, covered in wounds, stared in terror at a stunningly beautiful woman in form-fitting combat gear, her figure perfectly proportioned. Sister Hill, why bother asking? Just kill him. The map must be on him. Beside Hill stood 5 burly men, all wearing black divine armor. On their chests was an emblem, an A with a sword piercing it. A closer look revealed that many shops on this street bore the same mark. Their divine armor had a bold, rugged design with a massive mechanical blade strapped to each of their backs. The beauty named Hill smiled slightly, gesturing for the others to hold back. Die, right. Don't lie to me, or Big Sister will crush your fingers one by one. Her voice was soft, but her words sent chills down the spine. 3 swear? I never took it. I just happened to see it. Then it disappeared. You have to believe me. I really didn't take that thing. His lips trembled, his words stuttering. Is that so? Then why won't you let Sister search you? Am I not pretty enough? Hill's smile suddenly turned icy. I. Dia slumped on the ground, grew more terrified. He pressed his fists to the ground and scrambled backward, looking utterly frightened. Is Big Sister that scary? Hill smiled again, leaning in slightly, the snowy expanse of her cleavage barely. At that moment, a flicker of ferocity flashed through Dia's panicked eyes. You crazy woman. You think you can get information about the Earth Alliance? Die. He opened his clenched fist and flung it forward, releasing a cloud of black smoke. Hill and the others recoiled, retreating frantically. Damn it. Kill him. Hill's expression twisted with rage. Light emanated from her back, and mechanical armor flowed like water, covering her body in an instant. A blood-red female armor materialized. Energy surged wildly, lines crawling over the armor. 1 red and 5 black divine armors vanished from their spots. Dia held one hand to his chest as he sprinted, both feet fully encased in mechanical gear. He moved so fast that only a blur was visible in the distance. The rattling of chains came from the side and behind. Dia's face paled. He bent his knees, then sprang upward with all his might. With a thunderous crash, a massive mechanical scythe attached to a chain slammed into the ground, where he had been hooking into the earth. Little mouse, I'm coming for you, he. A light laugh followed. Dia, drenched in sweat, had no time to think. He leaped onto a nearby rooftop and kept running headlong. The commotion drew attention, but no one intervened. By now Dia had entered the territory of the three overlords' commercial district. With each landing, the mechanical feet left 2 deep craters, and Dia bounded across the rooftops of towering buildings at an even faster pace. Despite his tremendous speed, passers-by could only glimpse a fleeting black shadow. Yet he was still slightly slower than Sierra and her companions after they had donned their Xinjiang. Just as I saw a glimmer of hope. Why this? Turning his head to see the crimson figure drawing ever closer, Dia couldn't help but feel despair surge within him. The chase had already attracted the attention of many onlookers. But these ruthless bandits who usually roamed the Plunder Star unchecked all silently suppressed any thoughts of intervention upon seeing the crimson Xinjiang. Even the owners of some shops, upon witnessing the scene, chose to stand aside and observe. This only deepened Dia's dread. He had chosen the rooftops of these shops as his escape route, partly hoping to spark chaos and slip away in the confusion. But the deterrence of Sierra and her team was far greater than he had imagined. He had even passed through the territory of 2 other leaders. Yet they all chose to remain silent. Little brother, don't run anymore. Our boss has already sent word. No one will interfere in this capture. Sierra's chain tautened, swinging her body forward, closing the distance to Dia by another inch. Damn it. Sweat drenched his forehead as he cursed, refusing to stop and fleeing for his life. Leaping from one building to another, Dia's mechanical feet operated at full power, using every structure. Behind him, Sierra moved like a spider, her scythe hooked to the buildings, swinging forward with each chain pulled to cover vast distances. As the chase wore on, the gap between them steadily shrank. Despair flooded Dia's eyes, but he had no recourse. His Xinjiang had been shattered long ago, and even the mechanical feet he now wore were stolen. Just then his eyes lit up as a squat, featureless building came into view. If it's him, maybe there's a chance. At that moment, a gleam of unprecedented hope ignited in Dia's eyes. His speed surged even further as he veered unhesitatingly toward that building. Sierra immediately noticed his change of direction. The moment she saw the building, her pupils contracted sharply, and she gritted her teeth. You're asking for death. Stop, all of you. I'll go alone. The other 5, upon seeing that building, involuntarily swallowed hard and obediently halted. Dia finally reached the building before Sierra caught up. Instead of crossing over the roof, he leaped down and stopped before the structure. In mere seconds, a massive mechanical scythe whistled through the air, embedding itself half a meter in front of Dia. That half-meter gap was negligible before the deadly blade. But Dia seemed to have entered a certain zone. He stood his ground within the range where the scythe could easily claim it. With a clatter of chains, a crimson figure landed. Sierra touched down, her gaze fixed intently on the building behind. This man stole something from our spade. I hope the 19th chief will grant our boss some face. Sierra, ignoring Dia's pale face, retracted her Xinjiang helmet and shouted loudly. Dia dared not move, standing pale and trembling slightly. Receiving no reply from within, Sierra gritted her teeth and repeated, I hope the 19th chief will grant our boss some face. Silence. Still no response. Despite this, Sierra made no move to attack. The terror of that past incident was still vivid in her mind. She dared not gamble. But Dia's thoughts began to stir. If he left now, he would surely be killed by Sierra. Yet if he could enter the building or use it to evade Sierra's sight, there might be a chance. Faced with certain death on one side and possible death on the other, Dia made his choice. Staring fixedly at Sierra, he began to step backward. Seeing his movement, Sierra frowned and instinctively took a step forward. But fear restrained her instinct. She lifted her foot halfway, then withdrew it. After a moment's thought, she activated the Xinjiang communicator. A holographic screen emerged from her hand, displaying a gaunt old man with sunken eyes, long white brows, and hair a bald crown, and dressed in casual clothes. He sat before a tea table, lost in thought. In Lao he entered the 19th's territory, Sierra said with reluctance. No matter. Just keep. In Lao seemed unconcerned, his eyelids half closed. But if the 19th gets the Earth information, wouldn't it be better to let him leave here? In Lao said meaningfully. Enough. Adapt as you see fit. The information is not important. Just bring me that boy's head. In the time it took for Sierra's communication, Dia had already reached the side of the building, vanishing from her sight. Step out of here, and you die? Sierra murmured softly, her Xinjiang helmet automatically covering her face as she soared into the sky. Now in the shadow of the building, Dia glanced up at the crimson Xinjiang hovering in the air and felt a pang of unease. On the Plunder Star, the 19th territory was small, but there was an iron rule: no one from the other leaders' factions was allowed near it. Yet now Sierra was here, and the 19th had not suddenly erupted as usual. His goal remained unachieved, but at least the 19th hadn't shown up to kill him. Dia breathed a sigh of relief, yet couldn't help shuddering at his own audacity. Though the 19th forbade the 5 leaders' people from approaching, it wasn't a safe haven for just anyone. Otherwise, all those who had offended other leaders would flock here, and the place would be overcrowded. Uncertain of the reason, but survival was paramount. Dia began to move stealthily, using the building's cover to slip into blind spots where Sierra couldn't see him. This building had a detection-blocking device. If he could escape its vicinity within this time, he was confident he could disappear from the Plunder Star. As Daya pondered his escape, a sudden pain shot through his right wrist. The mechanical band on it vanished. "Who's there?" He grabbed his wrist and shouted, looking up, only to freeze in place. There before him stood a bizarre, worn-looking Xinjiang that had appeared from nowhere. Its hand had transformed into a set of fine tools, dismantling the band into tiny components in seconds, leaving only a chip half a fingernail in size. Daya's eyes widened in disbelief at the sight, his legs trembling uncontrollably. I didn't. Before he could finish, a violent blow struck his abdomen. He doubled over like a shrimp, flying out from the building's shadow and landing on the open ground over 10 meters away. Searching for Daya in the sky, Siena's eyes lit up. She propelled herself forward with energy, swiftly catching Daya as he was sent flying backward. Quite bold, daring to use him. She struck Daya's neck with a chop, knocking him unconscious. Then, with a wary glance at the shadowed figure of 19 below, she turned and left. Xia Mu paid no heed to Sierra. In a place like Plunder Star, no one slept soundly. The slightest sound could wake them, a habit ingrained in everyone here. After all, trust here was a luxury. No one would be foolish enough to trade their life for an uncertain trust. So the moment Daya and his companion arrived at the building, Xia Mu had already awakened, and within 3 seconds donned his Xinjiang armor, standing silently behind the glass. He had also heard Siena's voice, but ignored her. Today he was in a good mood and hadn't acted immediately. But when Daya grew presumptuous, Xia Mu directly went out and blasted Daya away. Yet the moment Daya saw him, his gaze unconsciously flickered toward his wrist, catching Xiamu's attention. Years of experience on Plunder Star told him that such a furtive gesture meant the wristband held something precious. Almost without thinking, pure muscle memory made Xia Mu strip the wristband off Daya. "What is this?" Inside the building, Xia Mu curiously examined the chip he had removed from Daya's wristband. It was a data storage chip, one that Daya had risked offending a leader for, and that Yin Lao had sent the madwoman Sierra to retrieve. Clearly it was of great importance. Lost in thought, Xia Mu inserted the chip into a terminal on the wall. A screen projected directly onto the wall, displaying a video. The video began with a water-blue planet, bustling and vibrant, devoid of cold steel jungles. Instead, it was filled with heartwarming natural vegetation, inviting seas and mountains, and elegant nature-integrated buildings. The video also contained strange sounds and block-like characters resembling subtitles, a language he could not. Xiamu's eyes widened in disbelief. Every scene in the video he had only heard of from others back when the main consciousness was not yet liberated and everything was vague. But what struck him most was that those who spoke of such things always had bright eyes, completely devoid of the gloom and brutality typical of Plunder Star. Later, after the main consciousness was liberated, he realized that the light in those people's eyes was called hope. The video was not long. Toward the end, the perspective suddenly pulled upward from the ground, eventually revealing the vast cosmos. Seeing this, Xia Mu trembled, stumbling back a few steps. Beside the water-blue planet, 5 or 6 mechanical planets, several times larger than the planet itself, formed a ring guarding it. A single glance at these mechanical planets made one's skin crawl. Countless weaponry, a colossal cannon occupying 1/5 of the planet's volume, and various warships floating nearby. All of it was awe-inspiring. Finally, a female figure appeared on the screen. She did not speak, but gestured with her body, pointing at a projection beside her. Xia Mu focused his gaze. The projection was an extremely complex blueprint. Through her body language, he roughly understood that it was a language translation device. It doesn't seem too difficult to make. After carefully examining the blueprint, Xiamu's eyes lit up. The current interstellar society did have language translation devices, but they only covered a few mainstream languages, none for the unknown language seen in the video. The video ended and Xia Mu stood frozen, frowning deeply. He had generally understood the blueprint and had the materials, but he did not immediately build it, still cautious. He could not guarantee that this device was not a trap set by the other leaders or some strange tracking device. The universe was fraught with danger, and unknown signal bands were everywhere. If while completing the device he emitted a band he had never encountered, attracting a powerful civilization like the one in the video, the consequences would be catastrophic. After a long pause, Xia Mu took a deep breath, his brow relaxing. There's nothing left to cherish here. The big swordfish is almost finished. If a place like that in the video truly exists, then trying to go there isn't a bad idea. Both the peaceful life on the planet and the might of the mechanical planets in the video captivated Xia Mu. That was the fundamental allure. With that thought, he hesitated no longer and took the elevator to the second floor. The second floor was where he built various equipment and spaceships. A vast space with the entire floor hollowed out and combined with the third and fourth floors into a massive experimental workshop. It was filled with countless devices, all acquired after Xia Mu became the 6th leader. If the other leaders saw this workshop, their eyes would pop out, because the facilities here rivaled their most advanced laboratories. Approaching a console resembling a control terminal, Xia Mu inserted the chip and put on a pair of mechanical gloves. With a click and a hum, the gloves activated dozens of fine tools extending from the fingertips. Meanwhile, Sierra stood with a dark expression staring silently at Daya, who lay on the ground covered in blood, his limbs twisted unnaturally. Cough, cough. A cough sounded from behind her. Yin Lao stood up expressionlessly. Let's go. Now that thing is in his hands, there's no taking it back. Earth. Earth. Daya moaned unconsciously, his twisted fingers trembling as if trying to grasp. With a swoosh, a massive scythe descended from the sky, piercing Daya's back and nearly cleaving him in two. We are all sinners. From the moment we were born on Plunder Star, we became the filthiest rats, forever branded as plunderers. Don't dream of redemption. Ha ha. A day later, a weary Xia Mu closed a fist-sized round box, connected it to his Xinjiang armor, and played the video again he had obtained from Daya. The Pangalactic Earth Alliance sincerely invites citizens of the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies to the galactic coordinates 226236. 214,515. Here there is a stable society that embraces all. War has destroyed your homes. If possible, we are willing to be your new home. Here there is no war, no chaos. Come join us, and let us rebuild our cosmic home together. We sincerely welcome citizens from the two galaxies, but we will strike back hard against any hostility. This is the last piece of pure land in the two galaxies, and we will defend it to the death. Finally, this is a device that stores our civilization's signal bands and language information. If conditions permit, you can build it according to the blueprint and come find us. Once the device is complete, it will transmit a signal to the Earth civilization. Depending on distance, covering the two galaxies will take about a year. Then with your feedback, we will publicly release the coordinates. Come here, and you will find us. Xia Mu was shaken, processing the information he had just received. The Earth Alliance, a civilization so powerful he had never heard of. The mere ability to broadcast their civilization's signal across two galaxies was spine-chilling. Not to mention the mechanical planets in the video, which seemed both a showcase of strength and a deterrent. Without a doubt, a civilization bold enough to welcome scattered citizens from two galaxies must have reached an unimaginable level of power. After a moment's thought, Xia Mu realized after the destruction of the two galactic civilizations, the scattered interstellar society suddenly saw an orderly, powerful civilization. With their unfathomable technology, it was plausible that they had the strength to unify the two galaxies. The data of Earth in the footage continuously struck Xia Mu's heart, revealing a world he had never witnessed before. In every aspect, it was far superior to the Plunder Star. He glanced back at the extensive facilities on the second floor of this building. Aside from the first and second floors, which served as his living quarters and laboratory, and the third floor used to store the giant swordfish under construction, the rest of the space was empty. Xia Mu lived alone, and a 100-story building was far too vast for him. Initially, the other chieftains assumed he would begin expanding his influence, and tacitly allowed him a share of this planet. After all, Xia Mu's terrifying combat prowess was undeniable. He alone was unstoppable, and with no one daring to oppose him, everyone simply acquiesced. But to their surprise, after the building was handed over, he remained utterly inactive, still solitary and aloof, something no one had anticipated. Ever since his main consciousness awakened, Xia Mu had longed to leave this cramped place of chaos and violence. However, lacking a large spacecraft for long-distance travel, he had no choice but to stay. Now the emergence of Earth had stirred his restless heart once more. Although he had been planning to leave recently, he had no clear destination, and some preparations were still incomplete. With a goal now set, he could no longer sit still. During this time, Xia Mu had not been idle. The giant swordfish was the fruit of his labor. The giant swordfish was a large spacecraft, the smallest model among its class. It wasn't that he hadn't considered seizing the ships of other chieftains, but those were all vessels designed for long-distance travel with large crews. Large spacecraft required not only a crew for launch and maintenance. The energy consumption alone was a problem. Under such circumstances, operating a large spacecraft demanded a considerable number of people. Growing up on the Plunder Star, a world of deceit and bloodshed, trust was as distant as the mythical utopia existing only in words. Yet that didn't mean he was helpless. The memories suddenly flooding his mind, coupled with his innate mechanical talent, allowed him to assemble a spacecraft from scratch. Fortunately, the data in his memories was sufficient, and the other chieftains had been quite cooperative, generously donating many spacecraft components. Thus, the giant swordfish was nearly complete. Xia Mu had always been a pragmatic man of action. On the Plunder Star, idealists were long buried beneath the Crimson Hills. Only the truly cunning or powerful survived. He took the elevator to the third floor, which resembled the second, a vast space. In the center rested a sleek, spindle-shaped spacecraft over 70 meters long, with sharp edges, a large tail, and a small head sitting silently. It was fortunate that the building occupied such a massive area, otherwise even the smallest model spacecraft could not have been accommodated. Compared to larger vessels, this 70-meter-long craft was practically miniature. But an unwritten rule in interstellar travel stated that any spacecraft capable of crossing galaxies regardless of size could be classified as a large vessel. Despite its 70-meter length, most of the hull was dedicated to engines, energy compartments, and other essential components. In fact, this spacecraft couldn't even support a small team for interstellar navigation. However, for Xia Mu alone, it was more than sufficient. As usual, he had converted most of the ship's volume into additional storage for power cells. The hull material was the best available on the Plunder Star. The chieftains had practically grimaced as they delivered it, knowing it could withstand the spacecraft's acceleration. Standing before the spacecraft's hatch, a beam of light swept over Xia Mu, scanning his entire body. Then the hatch opened. Inside, the ship opened into a spacious area about 7 to 8 meters wide, used for parking and maintaining the divine descent armor. Beyond a door lay the living quarters, a hall, a room, and a small storage space for food and energy. Further ahead was the cockpit. Settling into the pilot's seat, Xia Mu took a deep breath. Swordfish, initiate self-check. A cold synthetic voice echoed through the cockpit. Self-check in progress. Power module normal. Depressurization module normal. Wormhole traversal module normal. Weapon systems normal. Structure stable. Energy source sufficient. Self-check successful. No anomalies detected. Ready for departure at any time. Lying back in the pilot's seat, Xia Mu let out a breath and stood up. Before leaving, he intended to load everything usable onto the spacecraft. In his eyes, the only things worth taking were energy sources, the divine descent armor, and food. As for the top-tier laboratory equipment, wherever there were people, it could be found. Such things weren't going anywhere. After spending half a day transporting the necessary items aboard the giant swordfish, while wearing the divine descent armor, Xia Mu removed the helmet and stood by the window, gazing into the distance. That direction was where he had lived before his main consciousness awakened. The old man had found him there. Murmuring to himself, Xia Mu left the building, activated the divine descent armor, and flew off. And the old man had died by his hand. He wasn't going there to look for the old man, but for the blurry, slightly stout figure he had encountered when his main consciousness was still receiving memories. The divine descent armor's flight stirred considerable attention, even passing over some territories of their. But upon seeing the distinctive markings on the armor, no one dared to say a word. Instead, they treated it as a people on the streets merely glanced up before looking away, and the faction members said nothing. In the past, Xia Mu had made this same flight countless times. Still searching for that person, huh? A man on the street remarked to his companion, watching the armored figure fly. Still searching for that person, huh? A man on the street remarked to his companion, watching the armored figure fly. You're right. With his strength, even though he's alone, those bosses back, then tried to curry favor by searching for him privately. They found nothing either. Xia Mu couldn't hear the chatter below, and even if he did, he wouldn't care. The divine descent armor was fast. Soon he arrived before a dilapidated house. This area was sparsely populated with only a few hollow-eyed beggars leaning against the walls, motionless. Had it not been for the absence of the Scarlet Cross personnel, one might not even know they were still alive. This was where the old man had lived, and where Xia Mu's main consciousness had awakened. This area was the only place clear in his memories. Searching for that person had to start here. Closing his eyes briefly, he retrieved the still hazy memories, identified a direction, and walked that way. The divine descent armor's footsteps clanked on the ground. The surrounding buildings felt both familiar and strange to Xia Mu. He had searched every street in this vicinity, but there was never any result. Coming here every 3 days had become his routine. In his memories, that person had only appeared for a short time, but left a deep impression. Several concepts had been, but soon that person vanished without a trace, and as more memories flooded in, the figure became increasingly blurred. After walking a while, the area became more populated. The place where the old man had lived was essentially a slum, though there was no clear distinction here. Because on the Plunder Star there was only one kind of person: outlaws. The streets grew livelier. Xia Mu's arrival caused little commotion, and after years of this, everyone had grown accustomed to it. In fact, his presence had made this street more bustling. After all, as the strongest fighter on the Plunder Star, he was admired by many among these power-worshipping thugs. Not a few had tried to join his ranks and convince him to build a faction, but none had ever managed to connect with Xia Mu. He had no interest in power. To him, both energy and equipment were easily obtained, and the taste of authority left him indifferent. After a whole day, he still found nothing. Standing atop a tall building, Xia Mu cast one last deep look at the area. With a roar, the divine descent armor activated and sped away. On the Plunder Star, apart from Xia Mu, each chieftain had their own special zone, their main base. Every such zone was a forbidden area for other factions. Intruders meant only death. Though this iron rule had been broken once by Xia Mu, it hadn't diminished the authority of each zone. After all, in the eyes of the Plunder Star's inhabitants, Xia Mu had long surpassed their level. The gap was so vast, it was despairing. The Terrell Zone, one of the 3 chieftains controlling the commercial sector, was named after their leader. In a lavishly decorated hall, a burly man in a leather jacket was furiously smashing things. Two women in scant clothing cowered behind a sofa trembling. Damn it. Still no way to deal with him. His speed used to be a minor weakness, but now that he's killed Dark Crow, how can we defeat him? Lord Terrell, calm down. I've received some news that might interest you, said a blond man, legs crossed on the table, swirling a glass of red wine with an air of ease. Terrell stopped his rampage at the man's words, his tiger-like eyes fixed on him. Speak. The old man's hard-earned data on Earth was taken by number 19. So what? You expect that old man to dare fight him? Terrell sat down, irritably grabbed a glass of dark blue liquor, and downed it in one gulp. The blond man put his feet down, leaned forward, and said slowly, You don't understand. Everyone on the Plunder Star knows that 19 is a formidable builder. He can assemble divine descent armor himself. In recent years, he's been plundering extensively, likely constructing something big. I suspect it's a large spacecraft. As for Old Ian, though, he doesn't dare to act. Handing the data to 19 might be what he wanted. We have to admit, lately 19's heart isn't here. We've regarded him as a great enemy, but he's just been going through the motions. The blond man let out a bitter smile. But this is also an opportunity. If he leaves, the Plunder Star will still be ruled by the five of you. Upon hearing this, Terrell's breath caught for a moment. Then he slammed the table again, bellowing, So what? If that's the case, doesn't it mean everything I and Terrell have achieved is someone else's charity? I can't accept that. What a blockhead, the blond man muttered under his breath, not daring to say it aloud. After a moment's thought, he grinned slyly. I have another idea, but it depends on whether you have the guts. Are you questioning me? Terrell's eyes widened. How don't you think it's an opportunity when he takes the large ship out? The blond man sneered coldly. You mean we should directly dispatch a large ship to attack? Terrell's eyes lit up. No, deploying a large ship would cause quite a commotion. If we fight within the star ring, the aftermath could disrupt its operation. There are few people in this era capable of repairing a star ring, and if we act inside the star ring, the other factions won't stand idly by while we use a large ship like that. The blond man sneered. Think about it. Given his nature, he must have built a mini-ship likely piloted by himself. If we mobilize a swarm of divine armors to attack him, then... Terrell was puzzled. Are you so sure he's piloting the ship alone? If my earlier guess that he was building a large ship is correct, then he'd definitely be piloting it himself. If he had someone to help start the ship, he wouldn't go through all the trouble of making it himself. He'd just rob us directly. The blond man rolled his eyes. Hearing this, Terrell's breath hitched. He wanted to argue but found no point to refute. What the blond man said was the truth. 19 robbing them was indeed effortless. What if he's not leaving? Then we stay put. We've waited this long, we can wait for another opportunity. No. The next day, after the self-check of the swordfish on the third floor, the engines at the rear roared to life. In the main pilot seat, Xia Mu pushed the control stick forward. With a soft hum, the hull trembled as the dark energy engine's roar grew louder. The entire ship levitated in the vast third-floor space. The front wall slid open, and the ship slowly moved out. The sound of the giant ship starting up immediately spread outward. Many people in the distance saw the commotion and used various tools to peer toward the building. The dark opening on the third floor seemed to devour all who approached. Those who noticed felt their nerves tighten. Every time something stirred here, the Plunderlands would be drenched in blood. First, a long pointed ship head emerged, followed by the streamlined hull. The rear engines trailed a plume of flame, pushing the 70-meter-long swordfish out of the third floor. Now the swordfish hovered silently in the open space before the building. Several blade-like tail fins slowly rose and unfolded at the rear. Good heavens! It's a large ship. He actually managed to build it in such a cramped space. Even with divine armors helping, that's a colossal project. How did he do it? Someone immediately exclaimed upon seeing what emerged. He already built divine armors, the ship was just a matter of time. What is he planning? A large ship. Is he leaving this place? Impossible. Everyone who leaves here ends up badly. The roaming explorer corps outside are no joke. But he's 19. If anyone can do it, maybe. In a corner not far from the building, a member of Terrell's organization sent a message upon seeing this. After a moment in Terrell's special zone, over a dozen dark figures shot into the sky. After leaving the building, the ship hovered briefly to accumulate power, then, with a thunderous roar, it flew toward the wormhole dock. The flight of the large ship was immensely imposing, drawing many eyes. Usually the deployment of a large ship accompanied a major expedition by one of the factions. But this time the large ship seemed somewhat insufficient in scale. For a moment, many who saw it were puzzled. Not until the news spread that the ship had flown out of 19's building did it cause an uproar in the Plunderlands. For a time, the various factions reacted differently. But aside from Terrell, everyone else chose silence. As the ship neared the wormhole port, Xiamu's eyes narrowed in the cockpit. Swordfish autopilot. Autopilot activated. Please switch to manual mode before entering the wormhole. Xia Mu stood up, went to the room housing the divine armor, and donned it with a cold gaze. The ship quickly arrived at the dock. The dock of the Plunder Star had no guards, the wormhole was shared, and anyone could come and go freely. Nearby ships, upon seeing the large vessel, all gave way. In this place, only the 5 chiefs could field a large ship for expeditions. Thus no one dared to provoke trouble. But after the ships cleared the path, Xia Mu's swordfish halted in midair. With a hum, a side hatch opened. When those nearby saw the peculiar divine armor at the hatch, they gasped. He actually has a large ship too. How is that possible? He's always been a lone wolf. How did he get a large? The ships near the wormhole were stunned. Now there was another person in the Plunderlands capable of mounting an expedition. But why is he stopping here? Is he waiting for someone? I recall 19 doesn't know anyone here. While everyone speculated about his intentions, Xia Mu stared coldly at a spot on the dock. Without a word, he reached behind him and pulled out a rectangular box. Click-clack hiss. The box transformed and a massive gun emerged, sci-fi in design, silver gray, radiating a metallic coldness. It was Nightfall, taken from Dark Crow earlier. Xia Mu crouched, slightly set up the gun, and aimed at a certain point on the dock. Before anyone could react, Nightfall let out a roar, and a crimson energy beam vanished into the shadow of a building by the dock. With a bang, a blazing fireball erupted there. When everyone turned to look, they saw a divine armor with its upper half missing, sparking. Seeing this, the ships near the swordfish scattered like startled birds, fleeing into the distance, terrified that Nightfall in Xia Mu's hands might target them next. At this point, even a fool knew that the conflict among the chiefs had begun, a conflict they could not meddle in. Found out, 19, I've had enough of you. Today die here. A loud shout rang out, accompanied by dozens of dark figures soaring into the sky, hovering before the swordfish. It was Terrell and his crew. Originally, they planned to wait for Xia Mu to enter the wormhole when he couldn't switch control modes, and then ambush him with their divine armors, letting him die inside the wormhole. But they were discovered, forcing them to reveal themselves. They all wore a crimson divine armor with spikes on the knees and wrists. The leading Terrell's divine armor was 3 meters tall, massive, with a thick mechanical cannon on its back that exuded immense pressure. It's Terrell's beasts. It's really them. The beasts are here. The vipers must be nearby too. Pity Dark Crow was killed by 19 earlier, or there'd be a real show today. The onlookers, who had retreated to a safe distance, began to chatter again. Just then 2 ships, one large, one small, emerged from the slowly rotating wormhole. The large ship was rectangular, about 120 meters long, with a slightly curved bow and downward curving wings resembling a massive whale. The small ship was spindle-shaped, around 80 meters long, its construction perfectly aerodynamic, instantly recognizable as a speed-type vessel. Both ships bore a mark, a heart shape that seemed cut from the side. They too noticed 19 confronting Terrell. They moved slightly to the side, clearing the wormhole, and hovered in midair, looking like they were watching a show. Inside the small ship, a woman in a blue and white uniform with a curvaceous figure and delicate features had her long legs propped on the console. She rested her cheek on one hand, watching the 2 sides outside. Fancy returning from an expedition to such a show. That brainless Terrell actually went head-to-head with 19. Blood Orchid, should we head back now? Below her, several female crew members were calibrating the ship. No, I want to see this show through. Xia Mu didn't waste words. He activated his divine armor, azure energy lines spreading across its body, and vanished from the ship's hatch. Seeing this, Terrell's pupils contracted. He roared, "Everyone on guard." The others immediately tensed, looking around frantically for Xia Mu. Right here. A flash of pale blue lightning streaked by, and behind Terrell's formation, a divine armor's chest crackled with lightning and exploded. Thundercore. Terrell gritted his teeth. Don't panic. He's using a single core armor. He must have swapped out Ghostly Shade. His attack power can't be as high as before. Just defend. Feral Wolf. Terrell's divine armor changed shape, becoming smaller and leaner, its hands turning into 2 massive mechanical claws. With a swoosh, the divine armor burst forward, chasing Xia Mu, who was hovering in the distance after his successful strike. Surround him. His thunder core isn't faster than my feral wolf form. Prepare to attack. Terrell commanded through the internal channel, then lunged at Xia Mu, swinging a claw. Xia Mu didn't dodge. Instead, he sidestepped and countered, driving an elbow into Terrell's chest. 3 shadows materialized out of thin air. Pain flared in Terrell's chest, then a shock struck his back. Panicked, he quickly switched forms. Fierce Tiger. His armor transformed instantly, claws retracting, body widening and thickening. Simultaneously, the 3 shadows struck his back. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of armor colliding rang out. Terrell withstood the blow and lunged forward, trying to lock Xia Mu in a bear hug. But Xia Mu had anticipated it. The moment his attack landed, he retreated, then flickered like a phantom several times, dodging the ranged attacks from Terrell's men. Yet Terrell's assault wasn't over. A thunderous roar came from an inconspicuous corner of the dock, and a blinding white beam pierced through Xia Mu's divine armor. Did we get him? Cheers rang out in Terrell's channel. Got him right. He dodged our attacks several times already. His engine can't sustain evasive maneuvers anymore. Terrell bellowed, cutting off their thoughts. If he were that easy to take down, would he be a chief? with just one person. As Terrell spoke, the figure struck by the light faded. It was only an afterimage. With a roar, the great gun fired again, but this time from the air. A red beam plunged into a hidden spot. A dark figure shot out from there, vanishing in a few bounds among the complex dock structures. Inside the ship, parked by the wormhole, Blood Orchid's eyes widened. Dual core. He actually installed a dual core himself. Aren't dual core armors only for a few chiefs? How could the Plunderlands have the manufacturing technology for that? Where did he get it? The women below were equally astonished. In the Plunderlands, only the few chiefs had multi-core divine armors, and they were all seized from the outside. They didn't even have the manufacturing know-how. Yet the dual-core Enzymus armor was clearly self-installed. How could that not be astonishing? Among the 6 leaders, all of them knew of the multi-core divine descent. The Leguan core before them, combined with the iconic ghostly shadows, was undoubtedly the latest multi-core divine descent. This is getting interesting. That furious lion Talair finally couldn't hold back and made a move against him. I had noticed their little covert maneuvers before. Xuelon folded her arms, watching with keen interest the divine descent charging and darting among Talair's group in the sky. I'm afraid this lion never expected him to create a dual-core divine descent. Otherwise, with his current preparations, he should have been able to make 19 suffer as well. With a subtle glance at the distant buildings, a smile curled at the corner of Xuelon's lips. Let's back off a bit and leave the battlefield to them. With that, the ship carrying Xuelon and her people slowly drifted aside, revealing a vast open space before the wormhole. Meanwhile, the battle in the sky grew increasingly fierce. Even after Talair assumed his tiger form, and with the support of his subordinates, he could barely fend off Xia Mu's attacks. At this moment, with both cores fully activated, Xia Mu's figure moved through the air like a bolt of azure lightning, swiftly weaving among Talair's divine descents. Crackle boom. A thunderous roar erupted as a divine descent on Talair's flank exploded violently, accompanied by 3 rapidly dissipating azure figures. The triple strike of ghostly shadows combined with the double speed of the Leguan core elevated Xia Mu's power to another level. Inside his battle armor, Talair's forehead veins bulged as he stared intently at the rapidly fading figure. The men he brought to this battle were the elite of the elite in his organization, all equipped with high-grade battle armor and standard cores. Though they were only ordinary cores, not as powerful as his own Wancho core, they were still far superior to the rabble. Yet before Xia Mu, these elites were like helpless children, easily shattered by him. In the blink of an eye, 3 more suits of armor were blown apart, their dazzling flames casting flickering light and shadow across Talair's face. We can't go on like this. Everyone change formation and fight around me. Talair roared, and at the same time his tiger form armor underwent another transformation, shifting from its original heavy, ferocious appearance toward a lighter, more streamlined design. Realizing that a strong encirclement won't work, he's switching to a spearhead assault. Xuelon's eyes lit up in the distant large ship. It seems Talair's head isn't entirely filled with muscle after all. Sister Lan, with 19's formidable individual combat ability, won't Talair suffer if he goes Hedon as the spearhead? Below the bridge, a woman in uniform with a pale face asked in confusion. Xuelon withdrew her shapely firm legs from the console, leaned sideways against the back of her chair, and propped her cheek on one hand. You're underestimating Talair. 19's strength is well known, but Talair is no pushover either. Moreover, he has a group of elites providing flanking cover. In this situation, going against 19. Even if he can't win, he can hold out for a while. Hold out. The woman was momentarily stunned, then her eyes lit up. Does he have a trump card? Just wait. On the battlefield at Talair's command, the surrounding divine descents began to shift formation, changing from the aggressive encirclement of Xia Mu to a tight cluster around Talair. At the same time, Talair's armor underwent a transformation, becoming sleeker and perfectly contouring his body. 2 blades extended from his elbows, gleaming with a chilling light. 3 spikes rose from his back, and his shoulders and knees were adorned with menacing horns. Xia Mu's figure suddenly materialized at his side. Talair whipped his head around and swung his arm, the elbow blades slashing with a cold gleam. Simultaneously, 3 figures charged out from his flank, blocking any chance of Xia Mu dodging left or right. His only options were to clash Hedon with Talair or retreat. Xia Mu's figure trembled slightly and instantly retreated. Boom. But then a distant roar echoed as a beam of white light tore across the sky, hurtling straight towards Xia Mu. It was the sniper Viper hidden in the distance. Talair's formation had naturally accounted for him. It could be said that the moment Xia Mu launched his attack, he had already fallen into Talair's rhythm. The beam was incredibly fast, reaching Xia Mu almost as soon as it appeared. Yet what happened next sent a chill down Talair's spine. Facing the beam, with its tricky angle, Xia Mu's armor core erupted with lightning, making him look like a living thunderbolt. At the moment the beam was about to strike, the lightning exploded violently, and dozens of crackling figures appeared out of thin air. After the beam passed through, the figures instantly contracted back into Xia Mu's form. He's driving both cores at maximum power. What an incredibly powerful physique. Xuelan exclaimed, shooting to her feet, her beautiful eyes filled with disbelief as she stared at the re-solidifying figure in the sky. Talaire also reacted instantly. That last move. Even if it were another leader, they couldn't have dodged it, they would have had to take it heat in. No, I can't panic. He knew I had a sniper positioned in the distance. With that foreknowledge, Talaire immediately realized his emotional misstep and forced himself to calm down. But in that brief moment, Xia Mu's figure vanished from his sight. Damn! Talaire roared into the communication channel, leading his elite group as they charged in that direction. Viper, run! As his voice faded, Xia Mu's figure was already diving from the sky, heading straight for the source of the beam. In that inconspicuous warehouse, a figure burst through the wall and fled into the distant complex of buildings. Boom! As if responding to the thunder, Xia Mu's divine descent left 3 afterimages of pure lightning in the sky, its speed surging once more. Seeing this through his armor's monitoring system, the fleeing Viper felt his soul nearly leave his body. He knew about the Leguan core, but he had never imagined it could reach such speed at full power. To maximize the power and speed of his Shadow Sentinel, he had deliberately shortened the distance between himself and the battlefield. Now that distance became an insurmountable chasm in his eyes. The complex of buildings was right before him. If he could just disappear from Xia Mu's sight for a few seconds, he could use this sniper-oriented divine descent core to hide. But a chasm is called a chasm because of its unattainable distance and the despair it brings. A divine descent crackling with lightning instantly overtook him and stopped on the wall of a distant skyscraper. Boom! The wall erupted with a massive spiderweb of cracks as Xia Mu's figure accelerated to its peak, overtaking the sniper from the side and far ahead. Viper stared blankly at the retreating Xia Mu. Only then, through the visual blind spot provided by his divine descent, did he see 2 fading afterimages behind him and 2 intersecting fine lines suddenly appearing on his back. Boom! The sniper's divine descent exploded violently. Seeing this from afar, Talaire's eyes nearly split with rage. After Dark Crow was killed, Viper had been his most powerful shadow assassin. Now being effortlessly killed by Xia Mu right before his eyes almost drove him mad. Each sniper was incredibly costly to train, and Talaire had invested vast resources in these 2. Their weapons, Nightfall and Shadow Sentinel, were acquired outside the Jilu Star at great expense and through extensive connections. Now one was in Xia Mu's hands, and the other was swallowed by the explosion sparks. He'll kill you. This act of cutting flesh from his very body made Talaire lose all composure, his eyes bloodshot as he charged forward. Inside Xia Mu's divine descent, his gaze was also cold. The Leguan core and ghostly shadows felt extremely natural to him, though simultaneously driving both cores had caused some stiffness in his movements earlier. But as the battle wore on, he grew more accustomed to it. Poor Talaire and his men had no idea that Xia Mu's ghostly movements and formidable combat prowess were merely his adjustment phase. With the infusion of memories in his mind and the continuous growth of his body over the years as a leader with abundant resources, even Xia Mu himself didn't know exactly how strong he had become. In his eyes, the enraged Talaire's movements appeared incredibly sluggish. At a glance, Xia Mu could see dozens of ways to break through his attack while countering. At this moment, Xia Mu's mind seemed to have a supercomputer instantly calculating and optimizing various combat methods and responses. Unaware that his attack had been seen, Talaire roared and charged, crossing his arms to slash. Simultaneously, the elites behind him moved, as if they were part of his body, attacking in the same direction as his slash, combining to form a massive offensive. Before this, Xia Mu's slender figure seemed impossible to evade. Yet Xia Mu remained calm. Nightfall was somehow already braced before him, energy light flickering and charging along its barrel, then erupting into a terrifying blast. With a frontal roar from Nightfall, a crimson beam erupted, striking the center of Talaire's crossed slashes. At such close range, Xia Mu actually used Nightfall to fire. If this attack failed, Nightfall's massive barrel would become an obstacle to his evasion. Talaire also saw this, and instead of dodging, braced himself against the frontal roar of Nightfall and charged forward. The crimson beam collided with the crossed blades, and the elite squad instantly closed in on Xia Mu, whose body was slightly leaning back from the massive recoil of Nightfall. This negligible moment of recoil-induced stiffness would become the perfect opportunity for the elite squad to strike. In an instant, a dozen cold gleams slashed down towards Xia Mu. But Xia Mu's move left them astounded. The massive recoil of Nightfall only caused him to freeze for an infinitesimal moment, after which he carried Nightfall and charged forward following the roaring crimson beam. And this was the only gap in the elite squad's encirclement. With the Leguan core erupting, Xia Mu's figure shot out of the encirclement in an instant, causing all their attacks to miss. At that moment, energy flashed on Talaire's twin blades as he deflected Nightfall's energy beam. Before he could retract his blades, he saw Xia Mu rushing toward him. Caught off guard, he could only twist his body, meeting Xia Mu's charge with the horn on his shoulder. But Xia Mu's lightning-wreathed hand shot out and pressed it down. Talaire's figure stumbled in the air, involuntarily bending over, exposing his back with its 3 blades. At this moment, Talaire's face changed drastically. Before he could react, a tremendous impact struck his back. Faintly, the sound of metal breaking could be heard. Whoosh! In the eyes of Shui Lan and the various forces secretly observing, they saw that in a single exchange, Talaire's figure was smashed into the ground like a falling meteor. On the alloy floor of the square before the wormhole, a huge crater appeared. Xia Mu pressed his advantage, the Lei Guang core erupting again as he plummeted 3 afterimages, swiftly solidifying. The elite squad, snapping back to reality, saw their leader being pursued by Xia Mu and frantically tried every means to stop him. But under the enhancement of the Lei Guang core, Xia Mu's terrifying speed became an insurmountable chasm between them. Boom, boom, boom. Lightning bloomed, and 3 thunderous booms echoed, causing a slight tremor felt by people far away in the square. Boss! Stop! The elite squad members roared in anger and rushed into the square. A dark figure was thrown out from the fading lightning and landed before them. The elite squad halted, staring at the dark figure with uncertainty. The moment they recognized it, their pupils contracted. What was thrown out was a twisted, deformed divine descent. Its helmet had been torn off, revealing Talaire's blood-soaked face beneath the mask. The back of the divine descent armor bore a shocking indentation, and the rest was scorched by lightning. Talaire inside had long since fallen unconscious. Only then did the radiant lightning fade. Xia Mu stood there quietly, his eyes cold beneath the divine descent helmet as he stared at them. Before the crowd could recover from their shock, Xia Mu made another move. Nightfall, which he had put away earlier, was extended again, raised with one hand, its dark muzzle aimed at several low buildings behind Talaire's group. This immediately drew everyone's attention. They shifted their focus from Talaire to the direction of Xia Mu's. Do I open fire, or will you come out now? Xia Mu's voice sounded coldly. Ha, truly worthy of 19. To detect us even in the midst of such intense combat. A burst of hearty laughter rang out as Yin Lao and the others of the Ace of Spades appeared atop a distant low house. Behind him stood Hill, who had once pursued Dia to the building where Xia Mu was located, with the massive mechanical scythe resting on his back, one hand gripping the handle, his gaze fixed on the distant Xia Mu, brimming with excitement. Beside Hill were 4 others clad in high-grade divine descent, leading a crowd of fully armed followers there. Have the Ace of Spades and Terrell joined forces? Is a new leader war about to erupt? Then the other factions vying for leadership will start stirring as well, won't they? I smell the scent of an impending battle. Upon discovering that the hidden figures were Yin Lao and his group, the surrounding onlookers erupted in exclamations. Before this wormhole, 3 of the 6 leaders had now gathered. At this moment, news of the 3 leaders' clash spread rapidly. In the Star of Plunder, none were easy prey, and such conflicts were exactly what they most relished. Once an opportunity arose to tear a piece of flesh from the major powers, they would not hesitate. As for retaliation for these hyenas who never considered tomorrow, it was far too distant a concern. The Star of Plunder was a world inhabited by such madmen. Normally they might fear the 6 leaders' forces, but if immense profits were at stake, they would even dare to assassinate the leaders themselves. Dia was a prime example. For the sake of that Earth chip, he had dared to offend 2 leaders simultaneously. In this mad planet, as long as the profit was sufficient, there was nothing they would not dare to do. The arrival of Yin Lao and his group made the atmosphere delicate. Terrell lay gravely wounded and unconscious, utterly vulnerable. Although they had previously allied with the Ace of Spades, the benefits from this fragile alliance paled in comparison to the gains from kicking him while he was down. Xia Mu glanced at the distant Yin Lao, then at Blood Orchid and her people inside the large spacecraft, and remained motionless as if lost in thought. At this moment, none of the 3 factions seemed to pay any attention to the remaining elite squad of Terrell. Strangely, Xia Mu stood still, the others kept their distance, and Terrell's elite squad showed no inclination to leave. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Terrell's elite squad found themselves in a dilemma. The original plan for this ambush on Xia Mu was well coordinated, Terrell launching the main assault, with Viper and Yin Lao providing long-range support. It had been a carefully laid trap for Xia Mu, but his strength exceeded their expectations. No one had anticipated Terrell's swift defeat, not to mention that Viper had been killed even before Terrell was dealt with. This was also the reason their alliance with Yin Lao had collapsed. Once Terrell was gravely injured by Xia Mu, they lost their qualification as partners. It was truly a case of courting disaster. Among the 3 factions now on the field, Terrell's force was the weakest. Surrounded by wolves, they had first lost Crow, then Viper, and finally their leader Terrell lay unconscious. The strength of Terrell's district had plummeted to its lowest point. The only reason the surrounding wolves had not pounced was the threat posed by Xia Mu. After all, it was Xia Mu who had caused the decimation of Terrell district's high-end combat power. Terrell is finished this time. Who would have thought he could assemble a dual core himself? Blood Orchid straightened in her chair, her gaze fixed intently on Xia Mu as he faced Yin Lao in the distance. Make arrangements to attack several factories in Terrell District. Mobilize all of Spider Lily and ensure we seize their large spacecraft dock. Sister Lawn, is this an all-out war? The women bustling below exclaimed in shock. If we make a move, the other leaders except the Red Cross will not stand idly by. This will be another great battle. Blood Orchid's eyes gleamed with excitement. A great battle? No, this is a carnival. After today, the 6 leaders will become 5. With Terrell Crow and Viper gone, Terrell District is nothing but a heap of scattered sand. Hurry and make the arrangements. I suspect the other leaders are already moving. On the other side, Yin Lao, though seemingly confronting Xia Mu, had already issued several orders through the Divine Descent communication system, the content much like Blood Orchid's commands. In their eyes, Terrell District was now a massive, unclaimed piece of fat. Just as Yin Lao and Blood Orchid were issuing orders, Xia Mu made a new move on the field. Clank, clank, clank. The sound of Divine Descent's metallic armor striking the ground broke the silence as Xia Mu slowly walked forward. Terrell's subordinates, seeing the approaching Divine Descent, trembled so violently that their legs shook. It was a Divine Descent that looked utterly ordinary, even cobbled together from miscellaneous armor parts. On a normal street, it would have seemed ridiculous. Yet at this moment the squad felt no relief. Because this very Divine Descent had defeated their leader and all the high-ranking members. Ignoring their trembling, Xia Mu approached the unconscious Terrell and crouched down. A series of mechanical clicks and whirs echoed as the right hand of Xia Mu's Divine Descent transformed, its 5 fingers morphing into 5 precise tools. Xia Mu placed his right hand on Terrell's Divine Descent chest. Under the horrified gaze of the squad, his fingers danced rapidly, nearly blurring into a phantom. Simultaneously, the thick, towering armor on Terrell's Divine Descent chest began to disassemble at a visible speed. Bang! Impossible. Blood Orchid, who had been calmly issuing orders, suddenly slammed her hand on the table and shot to her feet, her eyes fixed on the rapidly disassembling Divine Descent of Terrell in the distance. Yin Lao in the distance also wore an expression of disbelief. How is this possible? Disassembling a Divine Descent without workshop machinery. Does such a technique truly exist? Now, watching Xia Mu intently dismantle Terrell's Divine Descent, especially at the chest area, both of them felt a sense of foreboding. Could he be planning to remove the 10,000 Beasts core? This was the shared thought in both their minds. As for their subordinates, they were already stunned by the sight. Since the beginning of the era, although some had survived through time-space lockdowns, the new era was one of warring factions and constant conflict with much technology lost, especially in a chaotic place like the Star of Plunder. The technique Xia Mu displayed was unheard of. In that moment, they began to understand how he could independently manufacture Divine Descent and large spacecraft. This man was not only a formidable combatant, but also a true mechanical genius. Unaware that he had once again reshaped the Star of Plunder's impression of him, Xia Mu continued meticulously dismantling Terrell's Divine Descent. Though Terrell's Divine Descent was powerful, its technical level was only slightly above that of a standard high-grade Divine Descent. What truly made it formidable were the expensive materials and the 10,000 Beasts core. These materials are wasted on you, Xia Mu murmured, but his hands moved swiftly. Before long, he located the 10,000 Beasts core in Terrell's Divine Descent central nexus. The 10,000 Beasts core was a diamond-shaped mechanical core the size of a fist, quietly connected to Terrell's Divine Descent central nexus. Though only fist-sized, its mechanical technology surpassed the era of Divine Descent by a generation. All of Terrell's armor transformations were controlled through this core. Once the core was located, disassembly became simple. The precise mechanical tools on his right hand danced, and in moments the 10,000 Beasts core was removed. Despite having suspected as much, seeing the 10,000 Beasts core actually in Xia Mu's hand left Blood Orchid and Yin Lao utterly astounded. They felt they had witnessed a miracle. After retrieving the core, Xia Mu stood up. His right hand, now covered in precise tools, returned to normal. He then unholstered Nightfall from his back, reassembling it into a massive mechanical cannon. The cannon's muzzle pressed against the hole Xia Mu had torn open in Terrell's Divine Descent chest. In that moment, the elite squad behind him, along with Yin Lao and Blood Orchid, seemed to know what Xia Mu intended to do. Yet no one stopped him. On the Star of Plunder, no one cared about your life, but yourself. Boom. A blinding red flash erupted, and a gaping hole appeared in Terrell's chest. The blood instantly vaporized. Even the ground beneath his back bore a massive crater. Thus, Terrell the Lion, one of the 6 leaders of the Star of Plunder, died in his unconsciousness. Before coming today, he likely never imagined he would be defeated so thoroughly. Xia Mu's strength had once again exceeded their expectations, just as in the past, when they had underestimated his power and been robbed clean. This time the consequence was his life. With a single shot, Xia Mu killed Terrell. With his Divine Descent core dismantled, there was no chance of survival. Casually stowing the Nightfall cannon, Xia Mu turned, and flew toward his large spacecraft, the Swordfish. Since the battle began, he had set the Swordfish's AI to autonomous flight, and it now hovered silently before the distant wormhole. Xia Mu departed with the 10,000 beasts core, yet no one dared to stop him. Much of Terrell's strength had come from that core. Indeed, if one could seize the core and embed it into a high-grade suit of armor provided their physical condition could keep up, becoming another Terrell was not impossible. This core was the key to the gate of the strong. If anyone else had been carrying it out in the open, they would have been devoured by these hyenas. But with Terrell's corpse lying nearby, even the most reckless dared not charge forward at this moment. On the contrary, as Xia Mu flew toward the Swordfish, the crowd that had gathered around instinctively retreated far. Xia Mu had long been infamous in the Star of Plunder. Having single-handedly fought through the territories of 5 leaders and become the 6th, he was already regarded as the strongest person in the Star of Plunder. But before today, although they knew there were gaps in individual combat strength among the 6 leaders, they had never imagined it would be such a one-sided rout. Terrell was among the stronger of the 5 leaders. Yin Lao had intended for him to occupy Xia Mu, but instead it was a complete collapse. In the face of overwhelming strength, all schemes and conspiracies seemed pale. That was the feeling Yin Lao had now. Xia Mu's power was absolute. Although he had a trump card capable of annihilating Xia Mu in one strike, it had a flaw: the charge time was too long. Watching Xia Mu enter the Swordfish, Yin Lao's expression darkened. Terrell was utterly useless. Couldn't even hold him back for a moment. Boss, what about the Void Energy Ship Killer Cannon? A subordinate in standard divine descent stepped forward. Yin Lao turned and glared at him. What do you mean, what about it? Do I need to teach you? Stop the charge and let's go. Now that Terrell is dead, his district is a huge cake. Wasting time provoking 19 under these circumstances is pointless. With that, he shoved his subordinate aside in frustration and turned to leave. Boss, look ahead. A trembling hand pointed behind him. Yin Lao frowned, sensing something wrong, and spun around. There stood Xia Mu, who had somehow descended from the ship, staring at them silently. With Terrell's death fresh in mind, though no words were exchanged, Yin Lao felt an inexplicable chill. We haven't made a move against you. What are you trying to do? A chill ran down Yin Lao's spine, but he immediately went on full alert, staring at Xia Mu warily. Did you have something prepared in the shadows? Xia Mu stopped in front of Yin Lao, looking thoughtful. Yin Lao's heart sank. The Void Energy Ship Killer Cannon was a deadly weapon they had plundered from outside. If other factions saw it, there would be a bloodbath. Especially with Xia Mu, who had obviously grown stronger. Once Xia Mu started it, the other factions would not hesitate to take a bite out of him. Thinking this, Yin Lao's gaze hardened, and he switched to a threatening tone. That's right, the Void Energy Ship Killer Cannon. It's already fully charged and aimed right here. If you dare make a move, he'll blast us both to dust. The Void Energy Ship Killer Cannon. Isn't that a main cannon rarely seen, even on large spacecraft? Did the Ace of Spades dismantle a large spacecraft? That thing is a true weapon of mass destruction. One shot, and even a large spacecraft without shields might not withstand it. I heard the Ace of Spades brought back some spoils from their expedition, but I never expected something this deadly. At Yin Lao's words, the crowd erupted into chaos. Xia Mu's gaze swept across the crowd, then fixed on Yin Lao. A Void Energy Ship Killer Cannon. Interesting. Let's see if you have the nerve to fire it. The Void Energy Shipbreaker Cannon, ordinarily a main cannon mounted on large starships, consumes vast quantities of dark energy blocks with each firing. A single shot could deplete an ordinary family's annual income. In a technological wasteland like the Plunder Star, such a weapon was even rarer. Once a faction had managed to seize one from the outside world, the leader, eager to flaunt his prize, had ostentatiously mounted it on his own vessel and paraded it around the Plunder Star. But the very next day, that faction was utterly annihilated by the others. It was said that after the battle in that special district, the ground was stripped clean as if by a swarm of locusts. Not a single part remained. Over a dozen factions had joined that assault, and in the end the mighty weapon itself was damaged in the conflict. Who would have thought that after so many years the Spade A would once again acquire a Void Energy Shipbreaker Cannon? Before today, the appearance of this cannon would have surely reshuffled the 6 major ruling factions. Yet due to the battle between Terrell and Xia Mu, the realignment of power had already begun. Though the area before the wormhole gate seemed quiet for the moment, anyone monitoring the Plunder Star surveillance network would see chaos had erupted. The Blood Rose and Spade A, striking first, could not possibly conceal their moves from the other leaders. Moreover, the events at the wormhole gate were not hidden. The other major leaders received the news almost simultaneously and employed the same tactics against Terrell's district. When a wall starts to crumble, everyone pushes it down. A phenomenon common even in the outside world, let alone on the Plunder Star, where people were only more savage. In truth, the moment Terrell fell, his district's power had already dissolved. The Plunder Star was far more tumultuous than usual today, as armed divine armors from various factions prowled docks and factories. Whenever they encountered someone from Terrell's district, they shot them down without mercy. A man in high-grade battle armor bearing the emblem of Terrell on his chest staggered down the street in frantic flight. After a sharp turn at an intersection, another group of divine armors appeared ahead, cutting off his escape, while the spade, as divine armors closed in from behind, trapping him in a hopeless situation. Surrounded on both sides, despair filled the man's heart. He glanced at an empty shop at sign reading Terrell Chain, in large letters now seeming to be shrouded in gloom. Gritting his teeth, the man used the last of his divine armor's dark energy to dash into the shop. But the divine armors closing in from both sides did not stop. Instead, they all activated and charged into Terrell's store. You violated the pact of the Alliance. This is an Alliance shop. You cannot make a move here. Inside the shop, the man had somehow removed his faceplate, revealing a rugged face. He glared at the intruders and roared. The Alliance. A silvery laugh rang out. A curvaceous battle armor stepped forward. Beneath its purple faceplate, no expression could be seen, but her voice dripped with disdain. Terrell is already dead. Do you think the Alliance still matters? Snap. A long whip suddenly lashed out from the woman's hand, wrapping around the man's neck in an instant. A phantom-like speed that caught him off guard. The sudden attack took him completely by surprise. Already grievously wounded, he had no time to react before the whip coiled tightly around his throat. A force from the whip sent a chill down his spine. He clawed desperately at the whip, struggling. At that moment, the seemingly burly man was as helpless as a chick under the whip's grip. No matter how he struggled, even activating the divine armor's power, he could not loosen the whip by even a fraction. Come along with big sister quietly. The woman with the whip gave a cold snort, turned, and dragged the man out of the shop. This was merely one corner of the assault on Terrell's district by other factions on the Plunder Star. In other places, even more of Terrell's people were being ruthlessly hunted. The once overbearing and arrogant Terrell faction, which had always lorded it over the Plunder Star, had now become a despised rat that everyone wanted to beat. Besides the other four major factions, some medium and small powers, and even lone wolves who usually prowled the dangerous edges had joined the hunt. Today the Plunder Star seemed to be shrouded in a dim haze. Battles raged everywhere, blood splattered, and the deep Red Cross, busy collecting corpses while casually hunting down Terrell's forces, moved through the streets. This bizarre scene did not seem to provoke any disgust. Instead, people appeared to revel in it. And thus a chaos that would engulf the entire Plunder Star began to unfold. Meanwhile, at the center of the storm, the instigator Xia Mu paid little attention to such matters. At this moment, he was frowning at Lao. Lao, having just blurted out his trump card threat, wore a grim expression. If Xia Mu's presence hadn't been so overwhelming, he would never have revealed the Void Energy Shipbreaker Cannon so easily. The Void Energy Shipbreaker Cannon's strength lay in its terrifying power, but its weakness was the lengthy charge time. Under such circumstances, the fewer who knew of its existence, the better. If used wisely during a heated battle, a sudden volley from the Void Energy Shipbreaker Cannon could sweep the enemy's flagship and overturn the entire conflict in an instant. But now Lao could not afford to worry about that. No matter how powerful the cannon, it was still an external possession. If Xia Mu decided to strike him down, and he failed to survive his spade, it would become the next Terrell district. The hyenas of the Plunder Star were never, yet allowing it to be taken so easily was impossible. He had paid a considerable price to acquire this shipbreak. Moreover, Xia Mu was clearly preparing to leave, so he wouldn't have to worry about the aftermath. You're planning to leave. From what I know, those Twilight Shadows have also entered the fray. Though Terrell is dead, he still has a number of loyalists lying low. Under these circumstances, even if you choose to fight, it won't be easy, right? Lao's gaze was fixed on Xia Mu's faceplate, which betrayed no expression. The pair of azure electronic eyes showed not a trace of emotion. Hearing this, Xia Mu paused and thought for a moment. Well said. A flicker of joy rose in Lao's heart. He pressed on while the iron was hot. How about this? We join forces. I can stop the others and let you leave safely. But before that, you must help us install the shipbreaker cannon on our Spade A flagship. Hearing Lao's words, the people around him wore grim expressions. In the distance, Shuelon cursed under her breath, calling him a cunning old fox. The temptation of the Void Energy Shipbreaker Cannon was indeed great, but only because it was right here. If they could seize it and mount it on their own flagship, others who wished to continue the fight would have to think twice before facing a fleet's full firepower. Besides, the Spade A fleet was no pushover. Before the division of Terrell's spoils was complete, no one on the Plunder Star would be foolish enough to assault the Spade A fleet heathen. You seem to have misunderstood something. Xia Mu's voice caused the excitement Lao had just felt to freeze, and a sense of foreboding washed over him. Before his eyes, the azure energy lines on Xia Mu's divine armor suddenly began to surge rapidly. At the same time, Xia Mu's steps toward Lao quickened. If there had been a chance to kill me, Sierra would have struck long ago. As for worrying about harming you and Terrell, I think in the face of an opportunity to kill me, you might not be that important. Boom. Two deep craters were left where Xia Mu had stood. Lao's pupils contracted, and he shouted, "Defend." Lao's subordinates immediately sprang into action, activating their divine armors. and positioning themselves in front of him, forming a protective circle. 8 light shields unfolded from their wrists, instantly connecting to create an inverted bowl-shaped energy barrier that enclosed them at the center. Clatter, clang, chains danced, and a massive scythe flew out from behind the shield and slashed forward. The air rang with the sound of metal clashing. Xia Mu's figure suddenly appeared in front of the shield, catching the incoming scythe with one hand. You guessed right. Sierra's silvery laughter came from behind the chains. She was now standing on a low rooftop, the scythe's chain connected to her divine armor's hand. Their exchange made Yin Lao's face turn pale and then green. Although he had anticipated this outcome when he sent Sierra to use the void energy shipbreaker cannon. He had never fully trusted her and had placed his own men there as well. But he never expected that a single careless remark would allow Xia Mu to deduce that the void energy shipbreaker cannon had not yet completed its charge. With no other recourse, his expression hardened. He roared in fury, "Twilight shadows. What are you waiting for?" Yet the only response was the silence of the square. Suddenly realization dawned on Yin Lao, and his expression grew even darker. "Those damned rats." Yin Lao cursed, then turned to Sierra and said, "Hold them off. They'll give you the promised Crimson Azure Core after this is over." Sierra raised an eyebrow. "Old man, you said it. I hope you don't go back on your word. I hate people who don't keep their—" Yin Lao frowned slightly. "Don't worry. Are you two conducting your transaction as if I'm not here?" Xia Mu remarked with a hint of amusement, and then his arms suddenly exerted force. Clatter, bang. The chain in the air snapped taut. The thunder core in his divine armor's chest surged with energy, and lightning began to crackle around Xia Mu's armor. In the distance, Sierra's expression changed. She trembled slightly, released the chain, and transformed into a shadow charging at him. Her speed was incredible. To the naked eye, she was nothing but a blur, closing the distance in an instant. Shing! Xia Mu bent his elbow to block as a claw materialized out of thin air, scraping across the wrist armor of his divine armor. Almost simultaneously, 2 more claws appeared on his back. But Xia Mu seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. 2 phantom images materialized to block the claws. This was only the beginning. The claw strikes grew faster and faster until it looked like a barrage of countless claws attacking from all directions. Sierra was actually moving around Xia Mu at an astonishing speed, delivering claw strikes in a small radius. At this moment, Xia Mu appeared to be on the defensive, but Sierra, who was taking the offensive, felt no ease. If the one who had single-handedly defeated all 5 major leaders, 19, had only this much strength, then Yin Lao wouldn't have been forced to deploy the void energy shipbreaker cannon. As expected, despite the ferocity of Sienna's assault, Xia Mu used the ghostly Shade Core's multi-attack ability to block every single one of them. As she lashed out another claw, Sienna's instincts suddenly screamed a warning. Trusting her intuition, without hesitation, she forcibly aborted the strike, leaping back several times to put distance between herself and Xia Mu. Quick reflexes. Xia Mu's voice came, but Sierra did not reply. Her gaze was fixed on the long blade that had appeared in his hand. She had no idea when he had drawn it. The blade was 3 feet long, forged from pure steel with a pitch-black body, less than 2 fingers wide, a slight curve, and a deep blood groove. The mere sight of it made every hair on Sienna's body stand on end. Sierra had a strange illusion. Upon that Tang Dao seemed to swarm countless vengeful spirits, howling and roaring at her. She could even see those spirits reaching out, trying to drag her into their midst. This is bad. This is bad. If the fight continues, she would truly die. Sierra's mind raced wildly, for this Tang Dao did not appear in any of the intelligence reports that the major factions had gathered on Xia Mu. All along they had believed that Xia Mu's strength lay solely in his iron fists. Until today, when Xia Mu wielded Nightfall, she still firmly believed that his power resided in his formidable physique, capable of withstanding the high mobility of various battle armors, and his terrifying strength. But the moment that Tang Dao was drawn, all previous intelligence became useless. Almost instinctively, Sierra turned to flee into the distance. As for Yin Lao and the others, they no longer fell within her sphere of concern. Are you kidding me? A man who could dominate the looting star without using a weapon suddenly pulls out a Tang Dao steeped in murderous aura in the middle of battle. This is clearly a hidden trump card. Sierra had never considered herself a match for Xia Mu. Even her participation in this battle was solely for the Azure Core promised by Yin Lao. But the situation was clearly wrong now. Forget about stalling Xia Mu. After he drew the Tang Dao, Sierra felt she might not last 2 moves. In the blink of an eye, Sierra had already fled far away. Yet Xia Mu's speed was no less. With the lightning core empowering him, he caught up to her in an instant, and the Tang Dao in his hand struck out with a simple, unadorned slash. A sense of crisis pricked Sierra's heart like needles. Clenching her teeth, she spun in midair, and the great scythe, whirling along with its chain, came crashing down. The incoming scythe spun at high speed. Calmly, Xia Mu bent his other arm, and without looking back, he drove his elbow toward the scythe. At the same time, the Tang Dao descended swiftly. Sierra's pupils contracted. Without a second thought as to why Xia Mu dared to use his divine descent armor to withstand the scythe, she pushed her limits, unleashing the full power of her divine descent energy, and barely managed to dive downward, creating a small distance between them. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. The high-speed spinning scythe had been caught with pinpoint precision by Xia Mu, who grabbed its handle. But the distance Xia had gained from her second burst was still insufficient. The Tang Dao slid lightly, and the divine descent armor was sliced open like tofu. A severed arm sprayed blood into the sky. Xia grunted, her face instantly turning pale. Yet even so, her movements were completely unaffected. Taking advantage of Xia Mu's withdrawal, she widened the distance again. Yin Lao's void energy ship-breaking cannon is charging, it will be ready soon. Although you can kill me easily, you don't have much time left. Are you willing to risk your own safety to kill me? Taking advantage of this brief respite, Xia showed no intention of counterattacking. Instead, enduring the excruciating pain of her severed arm, she spoke rapidly. One had to admit that her willpower was truly terrifying. She could speak so many words so clearly under such circumstances. Xia Mu paused in midair, seemingly pondering her words. Xia, glimpsing this from the corner of her eye, felt a surge of joy. If he contemplated the problem, she could escape quickly. Yet whether it was an illusion, she seemed to see Xia Mu's figure tremble slightly. Zzzt boom. A sound like an electromagnetic charge flashed past. The next moment, a dazzling arc of lightning bloomed before her eyes. It lasted only an instant, and then Xia felt a lightness in her body. The terrifying pressure from Xia Mu seemed to vanish. She let out a soft cry, and then saw a familiar divine descent armor falling while the scene before her began to spin endlessly. How is that possible? Inside the protective barrier, Yin Lao stared in disbelief at the distant Xia, her body severed from her head. A wave of immense terror engulfed him. Even that madwoman, Xia, couldn't hold on. He tugged at his hair in agitation, his gaze dark. In the distance, after dispatching Xia with a single strike, Xia Mu immediately turned and flew toward the shield where Yin Lao and the others were. The battle with Xia had been too swift. Yin Lao and his group hadn't even had time to react and relocate. From the moment Xia Mu engaged Xia to her death, less than a minute had passed. Earlier, Yin Lao had been wary of Xia Mu's attacks, unwilling to transfer, hastily waiting for Xia to truly stall Xia Mu before fleeing, and waiting for the void energy ship-breaking cannon to charge. Now it seemed he had been overly optimistic. With the lightning core erupting, Xia Mu arrived before them like a bolt of thunder. Boom. The acceleration from the long-distance charge combined with Xia Mu's physical strength slammed into the shield. Visible ripples spread violently across the barrier formed by the combined energy of over a dozen divine descent armors. Yin Lao, surrounded by his men, watched with a pounding heart. From his perspective, after Xia Mu drew that Tang Dao, he seemed to have transformed, his very edge threatening to cut through his armor. On the looting star, no one carried useless weapons. Since Xia Mu hadn't used it before and now brought it out in this situation, it could only be a trump card. And indeed, under Xia Mu's Tang Dao, Xia had fallen in an instant, while the void energy ship-breaking cannon was still charging. Judging by the power of Xia Mu's punch, by the time the cannon was ready, the shield would already be shattered. Then they wouldn't last a second against Xia Mu. He knew Xia Mu wouldn't show mercy. Those who survived on the looting star had long since abandoned kindness and compassion in some desolate star system. Stop. I'm willing to give you the void energy ship-breaking cannon. In a flash of thought, Yin Lao shouted loud. Yet Xia Mu's movements did not cease. After that initial punch, the moment he landed, his fists hammered the shield relentlessly like surging waves. The trembling of the shield grew faster and faster, appearing precarious. Yin Lao's heart pounded. At this rate, the shield would break soon. Don't push me. My large fleet is already approaching, and the pilots are my loyalists. If I die, this entire plaza will be bombarded by ship cannons. Seeing that Xia Mu was unmoved, Yin Lao switched to threats. But Xia Mu continued to attack in silence, like an emotionless machine. In truth, he was somewhat puzzled. Yin Lao and he were already in a fight to the death. The promises Yin Lao made could be obtained by killing him anyway. Among the 5 leaders, Yin Lao was the one Xia Mu detested the most. True to his name, he was extremely cunning, constantly maneuvering among the other leaders, employing the strategy of using one to drive out another. From a mere strategist to one of the leaders, his strength lay in his schemes. But this time, Yin Lao was clearly tempted by the plan to kill Xia Mu, even risking his own involvement. Fortunately, Xia Mu had many trump cards, allowing him to overpower them with sheer force. In reality, if Xia Mu's strength were truly, as the external intelligence suggested, this journey to the wormhole would have been certain death. And although Yin Lao had underestimated him, he had still anticipated that Xia Mu might be stronger. The void energy ship-breaking cannon was his backup. However, in this ambush, everyone had grossly misjudged Xia Mu's power. No one had expected Teller to fall, and Yin Lao's plan to use the Azure Core to make Xia fight for him at the critical moment had also failed. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and tricks appear futile. That seemingly indestructible shield finally shattered into countless energy fragments under Xia Mu's relentless assault. In the moment of the shield's collapse, the dancing light fragments resembled stars in the sky, but to Yin Lao and his men, they felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. This meant the last line of defense between them, and Xia Mu was gone. The instant the energy shield broke, without waiting for Yin Lao to speak, Xia Mu's figure moved. A flash of azure phantoms streaked past the crowd. At the same time, two more phantoms solidified and charged into the crowd. The ghostly shadows, together with Xia Mu's main body, struck like a tiger among sheep. The men beside Yin Lao were among his most trusted confidants with formidable strength, but compared to Xia Mu's terrifying power, they were far too weak. Xia Mu, wielding the Tang Dao, approached a divine descent armor. In the man's terrified gaze, the Tang Dao quivered lightly, and in an instant Xia Mu had moved to the side of another person. The first man was about to react, but suddenly felt his body lose control, and then in endless darkness, and to the other man it appeared that his companion had only seen a shadow flash before him before being sliced into neatly cut pieces of flesh. His thoughts drifted for only a moment before he snapped back to reality, shaking his head vigorously. He became highly alert, staring intently at his surroundings. The familiar azure light appeared before his eyes. He strained every muscle to swing his blade at it, but time seemed to stretch infinitely. He watched helplessly as the light slashed at him, then flashed to the next person. And in the end, he only managed to raise his battle blade a little. Vast darkness surged forward, and in that moment, he understood. So after death, one's thoughts truly are stretched infinitely. Yin Lao's guard squad was notorious on the looting star, yet now they couldn't withstand a single round against Xia Mu. The onlookers who had not yet left could only see three azure phantoms swiftly moving around Yin Lao. Members of the guard squad fell one after another. In just half a minute, not a single person remained standing beside Yin Lao. The Star of Plunder, an uncharted region nestled between two galaxies. Even though humanity had reopened the wormhole passages of two epochs, this chaotic realm remained an enigma to outsiders. With the dawn of a new epoch, countless factions sprang up like mushrooms after rain, civilizations vying for dominance. Humanity embarked on a new era of exploration, unearthing an increasing number of relics from lost epochs. As lost technologies were recovered, the epoch's development reached its zenith. Though far from the terrifying technology of the previous epoch that could move entire constellations, these recovered techniques were more than sufficient to navigate and dominate this nascent galaxy. In this age of exploration, the footprints of new epoch humans had spread across the entire galaxy, and countless ancient battlefields were excavated. Yet the Star of Plunder remained a mystery to the outside world. They only knew that in a remote corner of the galaxy existed a bizarre planet composed entirely of the most heinous criminals. It was not that no civilization had attempted to develop this unknown region. After all, the area where the Star of Plunder resided was itself one of the ancient battlefields, possibly even the central zone of several major battles that determined the course of the war in the old epoch. The reason it could be identified as a major battlefield center was the war debris that almost filled the entire starfield. Planet-sized fortresses and fragments of spacecraft scattered everywhere, forming a terrifying, chaotic nebula region. The scale of war debris here ranked among the top 3 of all excavated ancient battlefields. But danger also meant opportunity. As the center of the largest battles, the quantity of lost old epoch technologies left behind was undoubtedly the greatest. Hence, external exploration of this region never ceased. However, the endless war debris floating in space naturally formed an impenetrable barrier. Here, even interstellar navigation became extremely difficult, and navigating large vessels was even more challenging. Without the logistical support of large ships, the conditions for exploration grew even harsher. Yet even such adverse conditions could not dampen people's enthusiasm. It was not without reason that this place was called the key battlefield center of the old epoch. Since the new epoch began, countless explorers had ventured into this region, discovering vast amounts of lost technology, ships, and war fortresses. Some even found a well-preserved war planet within. This war planet was covered entirely with old epoch weapon technology. The small faction that obtained it by deciphering and exploiting the planet's technology leaped to become a major power in the galaxy. This alone was enough to drive countless gamblers mad, and it was far from an isolated case. In contrast, the mortality rate was shockingly high. Countless humans ventured into this region each year, but billions perished here. At first, people attributed the high death rate to the harsh navigation conditions. However, as time passed, information about the Star of Plunder gradually leaked to the outside world. They were a group of true thugs and bandits. Growing up in this region, they lived on the edge of life and death, possessing navigation skills that outsiders could hardly match. Against the raiders of the Star of Plunder, the only advantage the gold seekers had was their technological superiority. The discovery of raiders in this region caused a huge stir among the outside world. After all, since the new epoch began, almost all those who had hidden in subtime space islands from the old epoch had emerged. Thus outsiders concluded that the raiders here were likely descendants of humans from old epoch subtime space islands. But for some unknown reason, these people had gradually descended into chaos. The reason was not hard to guess. After a few years of conflict with the raiders through their equipment, energy sources, and ships, the outside world easily deduced that the root of the chaos was energy scarcity and the barren environment. In such an environment where survival itself was a struggle, who would have the leisure to climb the tech tree? Moreover, outside the Star of Plunder, the old epoch battlefield was filled with countless old epoch weapons. Although most were unusable, some remained. And these were enough for the raiders to survive on the Star of Plunder. The arrival of outside explorers only added fuel to the fire of chaos. On the Star of Plunder, explorers were synonymous with easy prey, and their navigation skills in this region were astonishingly poor. They couldn't even navigate freely through the chaotic nebula. To the raiders, they were lambs ready for slaughter. The conflict between the two sides' living environments was the core contradiction. No one wanted to change. Explorers were obsessed with the lost technology of the region, and the raiders even more so. Conflict seemed inevitable from the start. Thus, the outside explorers and the raiders of the Star of Plunder embarked on a protracted struggle. People constantly came here seeking opportunities, and explorers were constantly stripped clean by the raiders, who used the environmental advantages. But over the years, no one had ever managed to storm the Star of Plunder. The only way for outsiders to enter the Star of Plunder was to be captured as spoils by the raiders, never to set foot outside again. As the number of deaths here grew, the outside world gave this place a fitting name, the Shura Domain. In the cosmos, the beautiful starry sky glittered, but in contrast, the Shura Domain was filled with endless war ruins and pale metal fragments reflecting its gloom and desolation. Outside the Shura Domain, however, a supersized spacecraft comparable in scale to the moon was surrounded by an even larger shield. This enormous ship was brightly lit with countless spacecraft and starships using it as a transit point, shuttling back and forth between the Shura Domain and the outside. From time to time, ships with damaged armor, as if they had been through battle, returned from the Shura Domain, while various starships of all sizes set sail from the mothership, charging into the Shura Domain without hesitation. Wow! Is this the Shura Domain? It's magnificent. On the foremost deck of the giant ship, a long-haired girl placed her hands on the railing, her eyes filled with awe. The girl had an ordinary face, appearing no older than 18, but her physique was sturdy and tall, with remarkably developed muscles. The incongruous young face made her a sight that sent a chill down one's spine. When people around saw the sturdy long-haired figure, they instinctively moved away. Even looking like this, no one would take a fancy to me, right? She glanced around and muttered under her breath. I heard that people who are about to enter the Shura Domain are no better than the raiders inside. As a girl out here, I have to protect myself well. But Blackie's bioexoskeleton armor is really useful. Look, everyone avoids me. Great. Now I can explore the Shura Domain with peace of mind. A diamond-shaped crystal earring on the girl's earlobe blinked softly. Beatmaster, even though you have talent in piloting spacecraft, the Shura Domain is ever-changing, and the variable of raiders exists. The data in the Earth Alliance is incomplete. With insufficient information, Blackie does not recommend you enter the Shura Domain. Blackie is an AI, you just don't get it. The unknown is what makes it exciting. And besides, I've been making videos for years and my views have never exceeded 10,000. Do you know what that means? According to the Earth Alliance shared database, among the 54829 people who became StarNet video bloggers within a year, 52131 gave up after their first few videos, showed no promise, and didn't update for the next 8 months. Of the remaining 2698-2619 updated monthly. As for you who updates weekly and each video gets fewer than 10 views. Stop. The girl, as if stepped on a sore spot, bristled and said indignantly, don't say any more. Ahem, get ready for me. I want to film this magnificent Shura Domain and upload it. This time the views will definitely break 100. After saying this, the girl's expression turned serious. The soft glow of her earring flickered rhythmically as if recording something. The Shura Domain, a place that both fascinates and drives people mad in the galaxy. A flat, emotionless recitation began. The girl solemnly introduced the history and present state of the Shura Domain, while the earring faithfully recorded it all. About 30 minutes later, the emotionless recitation ended. The girl let out a long breath. Once I edit it and upload the video, it'll enter the Shura Domain. With that, she burst into ungraceful, triumphant laughter, as if she could already see her video going viral. Shura Domain, here I come, Lin Mingxi. The next day, a 100-meter-class spaceship departed from the port, heading toward the Shura Domain. Inside the ship, in the central hall, a group of people stood together, listening to the speaker at the front. I don't care who you were, or what you could do before. Since you're on my 6th revolution, 1,000-mile, you better behave. Being chosen for my ship is your good fortune. I, Dyer, have spent decades in the Shura Domain. In terms of experience, am among the most seasoned. As long as you follow my orders, the gains this time will be substantial. After speaking, Dai Air surveyed the crowd, saw no one objected, and nodded with satisfaction. Since no one objects, he'll take it as your agreement. Quite a few new faces, huh? He sized up the group, noting their gear and demeanor, then continued. Very well, then I'll lay out the rules and precautions for entering the Shura Domain. First, within the Asura Domain, use speedlight vessels and divine descents as much as possible. Even if you encounter large-scale war remnants, do not foolishly attempt to deploy heavy spacecraft and divine descents to tow them back. Trust me, you will never pass the test of the wreckage. Why? The wrecks outside don't seem that bad. This Asura Domain doesn't appear as terrifying as the legends say. Dale had barely finished speaking when a long-haired man below raised the question. Dale narrowed his eyes slightly, casting a cold glance at him. Since the exploration era up to the 710th year of the pioneering era, countless people have entered the Asura Domain. Even so, only the tip of the iceberg has been uncovered here. Do you truly believe the Asura Domain is mere? At these words, the long-haired man fell silent. He had only spoken in instinctive rebuttal without much thought. But now it seemed the Asura Domain might hold other terrors. Dale folded his arms and sneered at the crowd. There are actually three major threats within the Asura Domain. First, these wrecks. Second, the plunderers. As for the third, how those of you who have never entered naturally wouldn't know. Even the lofty civilizations outside refuse to acknowledge it. The dark energy tide that can move the wrecks. What? That's impossible. Dark energy tides can only interfere with energy, right? Although they last a long time, as long as you bring enough supplies and shut down the propulsion system, you can ride it out. Yes, how could dark energy tides pull objects? The words from Dale's mouth were like a thunderbolt on a clear day, and disbelief painted everyone's faces. Xiaohei, is this really possible? In the corner, Lin Meng's towering figure leaned against the wall, speaking in a dark energy tides are caused by the eruption of dark energy in the universe. But the technology to control dark energy from the old era is now fully mastered. Even if a dark energy tide occurs, it can be quickly quelled through technological means. Isn't that nonsense? I learned all that in school. Lin Mengshi couldn't help rolling his eyes. I mean, check the Earth Alliance database to see if there's any information. Isn't that nonsense? I learned all that in school. Lin Mengshi couldn't help rolling his eyes. I mean, this phenomenon seems unique to the Asura Domain. Dark energy tides erupt irregularly, and unlike those outside here, they do not disrupt active dark energy, but can affect physical objects. Why hasn't this news spread in the surrounding star regions? This should be a major event. Now it was Lin Meng's turn to be puzzled. In the 4219th year of the exploration era, humanity first discovered this kind of dark energy tide in the Asura Domain. Unfortunately, in the 4200th year, the major star regions announced that humanity had deciphered and fully mastered dark energy from lost technology. So you're saying these politicians suppressed the information to avoid embarrassment? Isn't that absurd? People die in the Asura Domain every day. With this knowledge, countless lives could be saved, yet they choose their pathetic pride. Master, the Asura Domain is merely a corner of the galaxy. In the eyes of those civilizations, it's no different from a barbaric wasteland. Lin Mengshi was stunned and murmured, so the lives here mean nothing compared to their interests. That's one way to put it. If news of the anomalous dark energy tide in the Asura Domain got out, it would greatly damage their prestige. Moreover, they have been secretly studying this variant of dark energy tide. Over the years, this has become an unspoken understanding among the major civilizations. Only the Earth Alliance's shared database would include such data. While the human and AI exchanged whispers, Dale on the stage took in their shocked expressions. I know you're all surprised, but the universe is vast and full of wonders. If you want to survive, listen carefully. Before coming here, you must have seen the spacecraft returning from the Asura Domain. Not a single one is intact, am I? Let me tell you, every time you enter the Asura Domain, the chance of encountering a dark energy tide is 100%, unless you leave within half a day. Dale's words made the crowd's faces turn pale. They had already entered the Asura Domain. Though the wrecks seemed dense, they were motionless outside. Everyone present felt that with their own abilities, they could navigate safely in a small spacecraft. The dark energy tide shattered their illusions. In a tide that could move objects, small spacecraft had virtually no chance of survival. Then what do we do? If we encounter a dark energy tide while exploring outside, we'll be finished. Ha ha ha. Dale laughed. Though the dark energy tide in the Asura Domain is terrifying, it's not unavoidable. Large spacecraft entering here are all reinforced. The tide has a gradual onset, from slow to fast. As long as you return to a large spacecraft before it fully erupts, you'll be safe. That's also why heavy divine descent spacecraft are forbidden. Don't stray too far from the ship during exploration. Otherwise, even light divine descents won't make it back before the tide fully erupts. After Dale's explanation, the crowd finally understood that the dangers of the Asura Domain were far greater than the rumors suggested, and they realized their previous ignorance. Next are the plunderers. Speaking of the plunderers, Dale's expression turned grave. These are lawless thugs raised here since childhood, endlessly navigating the Asura Domain. Those without skill have long perished under its rules. The ones who survive are true powerhouses. If you encounter them, never flee. Fight to the death. This is their playground. Never try to compete with them in familiarity with this place. Dale's voice was serious. Although the plunderers are all exceptional navigators, technology is their weakness. Their equipment can't compare to ours. That's our only advantage. When you encounter plunderers, they won't attack immediately. Instead, they'll circle like wolves waiting for an opportunity. Therefore, we must not only avoid fleeing, but also strike proactively before they find their chance. After Dale's speech, the crowd appeared thoughtful. It seemed they had chosen the right ship. Dale's understanding of the Asura Domain far exceeded that of others. Meanwhile, on the Loot Star, after Xia Mu slaughtered Old Een and his guards with lightning speed, the entire plaza fell silent. The large spacecraft belonging to Xia Mu and her group retreated discreetly to a distance. Xia Mu's terrifying strength stunned everyone. No one had ever imagined that an individual's power could reach such heights. This was a level of power beyond the comprehension of the plunderers who were accustomed to fighting in wolfpack tactics. Standing amidst scattered fragments and blood-soaked ground, Old Een's face was pale. Xia Mu walked slowly toward him, the metallic clatter of the divine descent's footsteps against the floor echoing like a hammer on Old Een's heart. You can have anything you want. Just don't kill me. Under the immense pressure from Xia Mu, Old Een finally broke down. Though the Loot Star was filled with thugs, they all cherished their lives. Their recklessness only came when faced with enormous profit. Old Een, accustomed to being above others, was now trampled into the dirt. This drastic fall shattered his composure. No need, thank you. I'll take it myself. Xia Mu thanked him politely, then raised his Tang saber and swept off a large head. In that moment, no one present dared to breathe. They stood frozen in place. Seeing no one else charging, Xia Mu returned the Tang saber to the sheath on the divine descent's back. The armor on the back split open, revealing a groove just large enough to hold the saber. Also my dark energy cannon. Xia Mu murmured softly as the divine descent reactivated and flew toward a distant area of low buildings. There, in an inconspicuous warehouse, rested a massive cannon with a sci-fi aesthetic and cold metallic. The cannon measured about 20 meters in length. If not for the flat muzzle at the front, it would have looked like a small fighter jet parked there from a distance. Boss, the boss is dead. A man near the dark energy cannon, looking down at a holographic screen, exclaimed in shock. What? Behind the cannon, a holographic screen, resembling a main control panel, displayed basic functions and an energy charging progress bar, which had now reached 81. Beside the control panel, a man with a mohawk haircut gasped upon hearing the news. Damn it. 19 is coming. Before he could recover, another worse piece of news arrived. Forget it, run. The successive bad news made the mohawk man abandon all resistance. But the dark energy cannon. Another man hesitated. Are you out of your mind? Is 19 here to kill us? He's here for this thing. Black Ace is already gone. Run. The mohawk man rushed out from behind the cannon and slapped the other man on the head. By the time Xia Mu arrived at the warehouse, the two had vanished, leaving only the dark energy cannon still charged. So this is a loyal follower. Old Een seems to have misunderstood the word. Xia Mu walked up and casually turned off the cannons, charging, muttering to himself. At that moment, a shadow appeared in the sky above the warehouse. Xia Mu's big swordfish spacecraft hovered silently overhead. Looking at the big swordfish's size, and then at the dark energy cannon, Xia Mu felt a bit troubled. To allow solo piloting of the big swordfish, he had maximized the space inside, and even installed a basic AI. Now mounting the dark energy cannon would be quite a hassle. Moi. Xia Mu, standing beside the dark energy cannon's control panel, let out a soft exclamation before his hands flew rapidly over the controls. This thing. Lost technology. The familiar memories surged into his mind as Xia Mu's fingers danced across the central console. With a sharp hiss, the mechanical armor on both sides of the psionic shipbreaker cannon retracted, revealing several thrusters. Then a cerulean glow ignited as the thrusters activated, and the psionic shipbreaker cannon slowly levitated into the air. A seat emerged before the main console, and Xia Mu settled into it, his eyes lighting up. Just as I thought. Then a cerulean glow ignited as the thrusters activated, and the psionic shipbreaker cannon slowly levitated into the air. A seat emerged before them. An opening slid open on the big swordfish's roof, and the psionic shipbreaker cannon dropped into it, its lower half undergoing a mechanical transformation that seamlessly integrated it with the ship. This psionic shipbreaker cannon can autonomously mount onto large vessels. This style is unmistakably from the lost technology. Back inside the big swordfish, Xia Mu pulled up a floating screen displaying the ship's outline, nodded with satisfaction as he observed the cannon now fused with his vessel. After mounting the psionic shipbreaker cannon, the originally light and agile big swordfish seemed to gain a certain heaviness. After all, the cannon was not small, and the big swordfish was already one of the more compact ships. But Xia Mu was unconcerned. With his modifications, the big swordfish's power was more than adequate even with the added cannon. After all, he was the one who had transformed a vessel like the small swordfish into something capable of traversing wormholes. While Xia Mu was installing the psionic shipbreaker cannon, chaos erupted on Plunder Star. 2 of the 6 leaders had fallen instantly, tipping the balance of power. The fragile rules that had been hastily forged out of fear of their might were shattered. The equilibrium here had always been precarious, and with such a cataclysmic upheaval, the entire Plunder Star was turned upside down. Battles erupted everywhere on the streets, and skirmishes among the various factions became the norm. The Deep Red Cross was frantically collecting bodies, but even with their efficiency, they could not keep up. The sheer number of conflicts turned life into nothing more than a rapidly ticking number. Even the shops once under the protection of the 3 major leaders were engulfed in the flames of war. With Tracy and Ian Lau no longer a threat, other factions of considerable strength began to move. This was only a glimpse of the chaos on Plunder Star. The shipyards and docks were the true epicenters of battle. Warships and star vessels deployed in waves, dark energy weapons roared and thundered, and beams of light crisscrossed, plunging the entire Plunder Star into the throes of war. This was the apocalypse for the weak and the carnival for the strong. With 2 major factions fallen, no one could swallow the colossal prize alone. So they tacitly avoided each other, focusing solely on these 2 fallen powers. They were like hyenas on the savannah, clinging to the wounded prey, waiting for a chance to tear off a chunk of flesh. A dying camel is still bigger than a horse. Though the 2 factions had been decapitated and were under siege from Dusk Black Rose and Deep Red Cross, their key resource points were not easily taken. At the root of it all, the battle had erupted too suddenly. Few combatants remained on Plunder Star. Most were scattered across the Shura Domain, plundering resources. This actually played into the hands of the smaller factions, giving them a roughly equal starting line. Such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity was not to be squandered. They were like fearless piranhas charging in to take a bite, even when larger predators were feeding. Because they knew that once the 3 major factions recalled their forces from the Shura Domain, there would be nothing left for them. At the wormhole gate, Xia Mu piloted the big swordfish, casting one last glance back at the place where he had grown up. Explosions and sparks were everywhere as shouts and cries of battle came from all directions. Chaos was the only theme here. With no lingering attachment, Xia Mu withdrew his gaze. The engine group at the big swordfish's tail ignited slowly, pushing the massive vessel into the wormhole. In the Shura Domain. Several days after Dell's speech, the group had spent their time traveling. They had witnessed the dark energy tide that could pull objects, but since they had not dispersed to explore, the pressure of the tide fell entirely on the 6,000 mile, leaving them unburdened. Lin Mingxi had kept to herself these days. Her cold demeanor ensured that no one found her particularly interesting, which was exactly what she intended. That day, the 6,000 mile came to a halt, and Dell gathered everyone together. After each dark energy tide in the Shura Domain, the positions of the wreckage shift significantly. Just now, our observer detected a planetary fortress nearby. It appears no one has visited this place before. Now is our chance. Hearing this, everyone's eyes gleamed with excitement. Over the past few days, Dell had not mentioned when they would begin exploring. Instead, he had been cruising aimlessly through the Shura Domain. Now they finally had a target. Everyone, prepare your divine descent and your ships. As per the rules, I will take a 20% cut of the loot. No sooner had Dell spoken than the crowd scattered like startled birds, each heading to the hangar where their ships and divine descent were stored. Lin Mingxi was among them. She approached a hatch, and a beam of light scanned her eyes. Verification complete. Hatch opening. The electronic mechanical voice sounded, accompanied by the rising of the hatch. Behind the hatch lay a streamlined ship, dark purple with a somber hue. Its sharp edges gave an immediate impression of speed. Indeed, the ship was named Purple Yuan, one of the trump cards Lin Mingxi had brought from the Earth Alliance. Though it appeared small and light, its performance was formidable, rivaling that of a civilization's main battle cruiser. Boarding her ship, Lin Mingxi let out a sigh of relief. She removed her earrings and placed them into a slot beneath the screen. Connection successful. Purple Yuan system activated. Beginning self-check. Weapon module normal. Power module normal. Armor module normal. Hull module detected a tracker. Fake image has been generated. Should it be removed? Tisk tisk, Lin Mingxi mused, pinching her chin. This Dell seems decent, but he's got his schemes. Then again, only the cunning survive in the Shura Domain. Don't remove it. Keep sending him the fake image, I'll let him be at ease. Lin Mingxi replied nonchalantly, as 2 faintly glowing white spheres floated up from either side of her. She closed her eyes, placed her hands on them, and let out a soft breath. Activate Purple Yuan. A low hum resonated, and the ship's entire system lit up. At the same time, a faint tail flame flickered from the stern. The Purple Yuan slowly glided out of the hangar, where rows upon rows of ships already filled the open space outside, a dazzling variety of vessels. Yet they all shared one common feature: every single one was a lightweight compact ship. Dell's words carried weight. Before coming, they had researched the Shura Domain and the dark energy tides they had witnessed over the past few days only confirmed the truth of his warnings. One last thing, be vigilant for the early signs of the dark energy tide. If you detect it, no matter what treasure you found, return immediately. Even if you can survive the tide, I cannot guarantee that the 6,000 mile will still be in its original. Everyone's hearts tightened. The dark energy tides they had experienced had each time pushed the 6,000 mile away from its original location. If they failed to return before the tide fully erupted, being stranded in the Shura Domain would mean certain death. Alright, the last tide was not long ago, the next one should take a while. This is your opportunity. Open the hatch. At Dell's command, the pitch-black wall in front of the fleet slowly split open, revealing the barren, desolate Shura Domain. Engines hummed and roared. The moment the hatch was fully open, all ships' tail flames swelled, and they shot out from the 6,000 miles belly like streaks of light. Dozens of luminous trails fanned out, like shooting stars, pulling long tails of flame away from the 6,000 mile. Lin Minx's purple wand was among the first to surge forward. As the hatch opened, the purple wand exploded with astonishing speed, plunging headlong into the Shura Domain. A colossal wreck of a battleship loomed before her, rapidly growing larger. A smirk curled on Lin Minx's lips as the purple wand, agile as a true wand bird, banked sharply to evade the debris. Whoa, there's more. A second piece of wreckage appeared, immediately startling Lin Mingxi as she frantically maneuvered the ship to dodge again. But it was only the beginning. Wreckage of all kinds seemed endless. Dodge one, and another loomed, an unending gauntlet. Warning: at current speed, and with your piloting skills, the ship will crash in approximately 3 minutes and 45 seconds. You don't have to tell me it's dangerous. Lin Mingxi gritted her teeth, decelerating the ship. Fortunately, her skills were sharp, and she managed to slow down amidst the debris without incident. So this is the Shura Domain. Terrifying. With her speed reduced, Lin Mingxi handled the ship with ease, letting out a sigh of relief. Alright, where to start? Recovered, she looked around with sparkling eyes. Xiao He, it's time to prove your worth. This technology is from your era, isn't it? See anything familiar? Anything that rings a bell? Analyzing. Preliminary judgment: low-grade starship armor wreckage from the Lance era, no salvage value. Hey Xiao He, I heard this was one of the most critical battlefields back then. Can you tell anything from it? Lin Mingxi piloted the ship while conversing with Xiao He. I am merely a rudimentary AI from that era, who I have no knowledge of the war. But it's truly remarkable. You're already so powerful, yet you said AIs like you were everywhere back then. What a mighty civilization that must have been. No, in that era, it was the humans who were truly formidable. We AIs were merely auxiliaries. Their physical bodies were immensely powerful. Some could even bathe in stars. Those were the real warriors. Lin Mingxi waved her hand. I know. What you're saying is just hearsay. Even if it were true, it belongs to the previous epoch. The Earth Alliance has never encountered such beings in all its development. Even the humans emerging from the interdimensional rifts haven't reached that level. In the end, weren't you AIs the ones who survived? This time Xiao He, the AI, could not refute. Because Lin Mingxi spoke the truth. In that great war, it was not the godlike humans who survived, but the ordinary people who had taken refuge in the subdimensions. As for the reason, even Xiao He had no way of knowing, for it was already an ancient secret. In another part of the Shura Domain, near a wormhole outside the Plunder Star, a slightly distinctive spacecraft slowly emerged from the wormhole. It was the Great Swordfish, now equipped with the dark energy battleship cannon. At this moment, the number of ships outside the wormhole was noticeably fewer than when Xia Mu had last returned. Only a handful of vessels remained, and they were frantically rushing toward the wormhole. Not a single ship was flying outward like his. The guards stationed at the Stargate, upon seeing this ship, unanimously retreated. As for inspections, are you kidding? They knew exactly how chaotic the Plunder Star had become on the other side of the wormhole. On the contrary, they even prayed that Xia Mu would not linger here and would leave as soon as possible. As for Xia Mu, he had no interest in them. This time he had prepared ample resources. Whether it was food or dark energy, he had enough to sustain interstellar travel. Moreover, the guards at the wormhole, though their post seemed imposing, were actually destitute. In fact, almost everyone who left the Plunder Star was poor. You never knew when you might be robbed, so most people spent whatever they had. As the Great Swordfish slowly sailed into the Shura Domain ahead, the two guards finally breathed a sigh of relief. They exchanged glances. It's confirmed. 19 has left. The Plunder Star is in chaos, a perfect time to make a fortune, yet he chooses to leave. Could Eldarine's guess be correct? Don't mention Eldarine anymore. We're members of Dusk now. Once inside the Shura Domain, the Great Swordfish gradually increased speed toward debris, seemingly having no effect on it. The 70-meter-long Great Swordfish darted through the Shura Domain like a true swordfish in the ocean. Inside the cockpit, Xia Mu, expressionless, placed both hands on two floating orbs of light, maneuvering the Great Swordfish through the Shura Domain. A large spacecraft could actually navigate at high speed here. If external explorers saw this, they would surely gape in astonishment. Such an operation was beyond their comprehension. Whoosh! The high-speed great swordfish suddenly banked sideways, a massive piece of wreckage grazing its underbelly by a hair's breadth. After executing this perilous maneuver, the great swordfish showed no sign of slowing down. Instead, it accelerated again, tracing and shaped path to evade more debris. Even so, there were still many wreckages ahead, yet each was narrowly avoided by the great swordfish. In the cockpit, Xia Mu felt nothing. This was as simple as eating or drinking to him. To survive in the harsh environment of the Plunder Star, one had to rely on gains from the Shura Domain or seize. Raised under such conditions, Xia Mu possessed top-tier combat skills and awe-inspiring navigation technique. Yet every time he fought the plunderers or ventured into the Shura Domain, he never felt his limits. Deep within the Shura Domain, Zilwan was weaving through debris, though much slower than Xia Mu's great swordfish. No luck. They say the Shura Domain is full of treasures, but if I can't find anything, this video series is doomed. Inside Zilliuan's cockpit, Lin Mengshi switched the controls to autopilot, then went to the rear cabin to grab a nutrient pack and a bag of snacks. Master, due to the slow speed, you haven't actually traveled far into the Shura Domain, so the chance of encountering remnant technology is low. Lin Mengxi's hand, which was opening the snacks, froze. She turned around and growled. If you know how to talk, say less. Understood, my master. After Xiao He went silent, Lin Mengshi leaned back in her chair, pulled out a table from the wall, and placed the nutrient pack and snacks on it. Then the wall in front of her slowly faded, revealing the bleak scenery outside. Inside the Shura Domain is so boring, debris everywhere. I don't understand why people flock to this place. Holy crap. Xiao He. Lin Mengshi, who had just spoken, jolted up from her chair, eyes blazing with excitement as she stared at a damaged planet mostly obscured by wreckage. Yes, master. Look over there. Scan it. Without waiting for Xiao He's reply, she dashed into the cockpit, disengaged autopilot, and switched to manual control. The Zilwan shuddered slightly, then its tail flame roared, accelerating sharply. It banked sharply through the debris and flew toward the damaged planet. Lin Mengshi focused on piloting the surrounding wreckage, whizzing past one after another. Soon the full view of the damaged planet appeared before her. It was a mechanical planet roughly the size of Earth. But at its center was a massive hole that pierced straight through, revealing melted machinery and metal. The planet's surface was riddled with craters with not a single intact structure in sight. Scan complete. A mechanized fortress from the Lance era, a 5th-tier war weapon. However, all functions are now defunct. F5th tier. Lin Mengxi's mouth gaped, her eyes glazed over. In the new era, lost technology war weapons were classified into 7 tiers. Tier 1 was the level of ordinary large spacecraft capable of planetary surface and orbital combat. Tier 2 were giant spacecraft typically serving as command ships or flagships for various civilizations. Tier 3 war weapons could support interstellar warfare, usually resembling planet-destroying cannons. Tier 4 had reached an extremely terrifying realm capable of destroying an entire star system with a single blow. Such weapons were exceedingly rare among current civilizations. Tier 5 was the planet fortress before Lin Mengxi's eyes, integrating offense and defense. It could cross star systems or wormholes without any pressure, with an internal self-sustaining ecosystem and production system allowing long-term operations as long as dark energy blocks were sufficient. As for Tiers 6 and 7, they were classified as weapons of utmost secrecy by major civilizations. Of course, the above were classifications for those war behemoths. At present, major civilizations couldn't even fully explore their own star domains. Without conflicts of interest, wars were extremely rare. Against this backdrop, exploring lost technology was the fastest means of development. The Divine Descent armor was a prime example. This hybrid of lost technology and modern science, designed for elite operations, could adapt to all-weather combat. Even in the event of war against individually weak humans, they could execute decapitation strikes. And the power of the Divine Descent did not end there. Rumors circulated that the high-ranking officials of various civilizations possessed Divine Descent armors capable of contending with 7th-tier weapons. How could Lin Mengshi not be excited by the appearance of a 5th-tier war fortress? Such a fortress was the crystallization of lost technology. Inside, whether it was various weapons or the cores needed for Divine Descent, she could make a fortune. At this moment, Lin Mengshi had completely forgotten about filming her video. Although the war fortress before her was already battered and broken, its sheer size meant there must be plenty of intact components, especially cores and such. In the new era, Divine Descent cores came from both modern manufacturing and remnants of the old epic. Although many of the old epic's technologies had been deciphered and adopted by the new era, the Divine Descent core remained the most difficult to crack. Hence, every old epic Divine Descent core was priceless. At the thought, Lin Mengshi became ecstatic. If she could find a core here. The Zilwan soon landed on a relatively intact platform of the fortress. Lin Mengshi, clad in a set of crimson Divine Descent armor, exited the hatch. Once she donned the divine descent, Lin Minx's figure appeared much smaller than her disguised form. The crimson armor was designed as a female-style light suit entirely red with 4 diamond-shaped wings on its back. Only upon landing could one see the true devastation of the old epic war fortress. Ruins as far as the eye could see, steel melted by extreme heat, and then cooled again, broken turrets, fractured bases. Looking up, desolation stretched in every direction. As Lin Mingxi stepped onto this steel fortress, her expression froze. Because she clearly saw ahead of her a divine descent corpse floating silently, its chest bearing a charred hole. Ah! A scream escaped her, and Lin Mingxi dropped to her knees with a thud. Wah! Someone's woo my war fortress. It is obvious, my master, your intelligence is somewhat lacking. If everyone were like you, able to find such a heavy artifact as a war fortress within a few days of entering the Shura Domain, then the Shura Domain would have been turned upside down by now. Shut up. No one thinks you're mute if you don't speak. Lin Mingxi said fiercely, standing up. Yes, my After Xiao He replied, it fell silent. And Lin Mingxi composed herself and began to carefully observe the war fortress. Although others had already explored it, no one could fully grasp the entirety of the lost technology. She refused to believe that anyone could truly search every corner of this place. Don't forget, she had Xiao He and AI from the old era. When it came to understanding old era technology, this one was definitely a master-level expert. Initiate scan, Xiao He. I don't believe it. Received scan initiated. Please keep moving. Lin Mingxi immediately activated her divine descent and began patrolling the war fortress. Compared to others who slowly inspected with energy detectors and the naked eye, she was undoubtedly much more convenient. With Xiao He scanning whether it was depleted energy weapons or those hard-to-detect items, a single scan would yield results. One person and one AI thus roamed the war fortress. The fortress was enormous. Even with Xiao He, it was no small task. 1 hour. Huff, this fortress is quite large, but that's good. The probability of those people having searched it completely will be very low. After all, considering the frequency of the dark energy tides here, no one could stay here forever, right? 2 hours. Why does it feel like this war fortress has been discovered more than once? 3 hours. Oh, I don't believe it. With Xiao He here, how could I end up empty-handed? 4 hours. We've already searched half, and still no gains. Has it really been emptied? After saying that, Lin Mingx's patrol flight speed increased a bit. 5 hours. No one could be that roof. 6 hours. A greedy scavenger. Lin Mingxi stared at the marks on a piece of unknown metal that had clearly been cut recently, feeling like crying, but having no tears. Only that area is left. She flew with empty eyes towards the last unscanned region. Xiao He continued to scan loyally. Half an hour later. Nothing. Empty, Xiao He. There really is a greedy scavenger. Woo-woo. They didn't even spare the decent alloy walls. That's really inhuman. At least leave me a little. My first pot of gold. Woo. Lin Mingxi finally couldn't hold it together. Master, although I know it might not be appropriate to speak now, it seems the dark energy tide is stirring. Searched for half a day and found nothing, and now dark energy tide is chasing me. Fuming inside, Lin Mingxi ultimately obeyed her Bodis instinct, activated divine descent at full power, and rushed towards the location of the spaceship. At the same time, the surrounding debris all trembled slightly, as if some invisible force was pulling them. Then the pieces of debris began to move slowly, one by one. Although the speed seemed slow, it was continuous. Back on the Zilwan spaceship, Lin Mingx's pupils contracted at this sight. It was completely different being inside the 6,000 and watching the dark energy tide from outside. Not only the surrounding debris, but even the Qingwan spaceship was being pulled. The dark energy tide was like an undercurrent in the ocean, churning endless debris. The spaceship started, and Lin Mingxi had to sacrifice part of its power to adjust its flight path. This caused the spaceship's speed to slow down. Fortunately, it was only the beginning of the tide surges, and small spacecraft could still navigate normally. On the other side, Xia Mu also sensed the stirring of the dark energy tide. However, he merely frowned and then ignored it. This dark energy tide might be terrifying to outsiders, but the people of the Plunder Star had their own methods. Over the years of dealing with the dark energy tide, the people of the Plunder Star had discovered that the tide was actually composed of several surging streams of dark energy sweeping through. The greatest threat of the dark energy tide was the pulling of debris into collisions. At such times, as long as the armor was thick enough, one could survive the tide and even pilot the ship along the current. Of course, if you had enough dark energy blocks, you could also use energy shields to withstand the tide, which could last up to a week at times. Xia Mu opened the energy detector on the spaceship and indeed found the dark energy tide stirring restlessly, with eerie curves appearing on the screen. After a quick glance, Xia Mu regretfully turned off the screen. The direction of this dark energy tide didn't match where he needed to go. It seemed riding the tide was impossible. After a quick glance, Xia Mu regretfully turned off the screen. The direction of this dark energy tide didn't match where he needed to go. A thick layer of armor spread out from the hull of the great swordfish, enveloping the dark energy shipbreaker cannon and the hull together. At that moment, the speed of the dark energy tide increased rapidly, and the surrounding war debris rained down on the armor. Xia Mu glanced at the general direction of the tide, and the spaceship slowly sailed against the current. To minimize losses in the dark energy tide, placing a large obstruction in the direction of the tide's approach was the best choice. That was precisely Xia Mu's intention now. He needed to find a shelter to protect the great swordfish before the tide became truly fierce. On the other side, Lin Mingxi finally returned to the 6,000 li before the dark energy tide fully surged. Returning with her were a few others. After entering the hull, the hatch did not close immediately, as there were still others outside who had not yet returned. The 6,000 li had activated its energy shield to defend against incoming debris. In the cockpit, Dyer frowned at those who had returned in the hull. Newcomers are too greedy. They simply don't know the terror of the dark energy tide. Forget it, it'll wait another 10 minutes. Those who haven't returned can become debris of this Shura Domain. In the following 10 minutes, more people returned one after another, all with a look of lingering fear. Their spaceships were also in a sorry state, with energy nearly depleted and surfaces pockmarked, apparently having suffered many debris impacts. After these people entered, the hatch slowly lowered and closed completely. Hey, there are still people who haven't returned. Some of the first arrivals instinctively shouted at the camera in the corner. Those fools won't be coming back. That's the price of greed. As he spoke, the cabin wall before everyone became transparent. Outside, debris rained down like a torrent, continuously striking the energy shield, causing violent ripples. We haven't been back long. How did the surge become so intense? Those who had returned last exclaimed in surprise. Right, I was one of the last to return. The tide was pushing debris quickly then, but not to this extent. As if hearing everyone's doubts, Dyer's cold laugh sounded again. The speed of the dark energy tide increases geometrically. A bunch of fools. You've been here for so long, seen the tide before, and still haven't memorized the pattern. Now hold on tight. I don't have that much money to block all the debris with the energy shield. As soon as Dyer finished speaking, several huge pillars appeared on the outer armor, and then a large amount of thick armor spread out, enveloping the entire spaceship, making it look like a giant egg. Then intense impacts sounded. Boom, 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 boom. The entire 6,000 li trembled violently, like a small boat on raging waves. Everyone turned around silently. What Dyer said was true, and they had been warned before departure. At such a time, they naturally wouldn't say more. After all, those who didn't return had made their own choices. So this is the interstellar. Lin Mingxi was slightly stunned and silently walked back to her cabin. According to the data I found earlier, the captain you encountered this time is quite decent. Few people would use energy shields to block the dark energy tide while explorers return. Xiao Hei's voice sounded in her ear. Lin Mingxi was stunned, then smiled helplessly. It's also the path they chose themselves. They'll go back, have a good rest, and next time I will definitely find the lost technology. This dark energy tide lasted a full day before finally receding. The eggshell-like alloy armor on the outside of the 6,000 li was also retracted. By the spaceship's porthole, Lin Mingxi gazed in awe at the armor that was almost completely deformed. Even though I've seen it a few times, it's still astonishing. The armor should be made of Aoyuan alloy, right? An alloy ranked among the strongest in the galaxy was battered like this. If we had used the energy shield, the consumption would be terrifying. Is this the true face of the Shura Domain? As Lin Mingxi marveled, a shrill alarm suddenly sounded throughout the entire ship. The alarm echoed continuously. Lin Mingxi was only stunned for a moment before immediately recalling Dyer's words. She quickly put on her divine descent and went to the central cabin to assemble. The others did the same. The reputation of the raiders was not just famous in the Shura Domain. Even in the outer galaxies, these thugs were a terrifying presence. The name of the raiders made everyone assemble quickly. By the time Lin Mingxi arrived at the central cabin, half of the people had already gathered, and the rest all assembled within a minute.